I mean, we would still be America if we had an influx of people of any race, creed, or color. That's like the dumbest thing that I've heard so far.
It wouldn't be America as we know it. It would be something else.
Fair enough.
It makes more sense to me to move more so towards a colorblind society. Here's why.
Yeah, that's a dumb thing. But when you analyze a problem, there's a problem in this country, right? There is a group of people that's being affected by the problem. If you just have a quote-unquote colorblind solution, just treat everyone as people, right? That's a perfect way to make sure black people never get what they need.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Oh, we have a panel for you today, gang. We have a show for you today. We are going to be talking about race in America. How is the best way to deal with racial injustice, with racial issues? Is it through a racial lens, or should we take the colorblind approach? I've gathered a great cast, all stars, each and every one, to talk about this today. And I guess I want to start by just asking this question to all of you. And this will be kind of the opening question. You can answer it in your opening statements. But the question is this. How important is it to be black in America for you? How important is being black to you? And what does that even mean in modern context? We're going to start with Izzy. Go ahead.
I'm 𝕎𝙬𝖎𝖙𝖘𝍍𝖐. You can find me on Twitter tweeting about literally just anything under the sun, from politics, fighting games, movie, media, whatever. As far as for me, how important it is to be black, I view it as you have to delve into like your background. If you have to delve into your culture and your roots. For me, my parents came from Kenya, and so they had made a lot of sacrifices to make that happen. Did a lot of work. It kind of causes a bit of a dissonance between a lot of the experiences that African Americans here have, because a lot of them didn't have that well-off start of having immigrant parents. They were just descended from foundational Black Americans, and so it's even more important for them to also have an understanding of their history, because it goes as far back as as basically slavery, and then it's kaput from there. It has to be assessed and understood as to get really understand why we are where we are right now. It's important. I think that modern racial issues are a lot less cut and dry than they used to be, and probably have a bit more nuance to them, but I think it still matters when you come about understanding why any particular demographic is where it is. But that's it.
All right, well, thanks for being here. I'm glad we can actually hear you this time. And so we're looking forward to hearing actually what you have to say. Next up,
you'll get sick of it. You'll get sick of it fast.
I'm sure we will. Majin, go ahead. What do you got?
Hey man, until just the other day, I actually thought this was just on the debate of colorblindness, and I thought it was like
that is going to be the main thrust of it, but
how people use the term colorblindness and stuff nowadays, and how I felt that it kind of replaced like, hey, I got a black friend in this modern day and age. But I guess if I really have to like look at it with the racial awareness thing, is that I could definitely acknowledge that, us as human beings, that we need to probably start moving towards, the humanity role, but culture does mean something. And when being black in America, and even though that's our identity and stuff like that, and you hear a lot of this espousing that we need to move away from racial identity and stuff, what makes it important to be black or African American is what we've been through. Our past, our history, the struggles we went through, and yada, yada, yada. Like us coming from the bottom, and every fucking single time, no matter what the adversity it is, we rise to the occasion. A shitty day for a black person is Monday. We're partying by Friday. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear other people's debates and see where this goes, and then see if I can add some more stuff in on top of that.
Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Always glad to have you. Second time on here, and we liked you so much we had to have you on again. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, sir.
No stranger to my show. No stranger to my heart. PrimeCayes, what you got?
This is a weird question. Is it important to be black in America? Like, or why is it important? No particular reason. Why would it be? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me, like at all. I can say that I've gotten value out of being black because it, going through my struggles, it's given me perspective, and empathy for people who are dealing with other struggles that aren't my own. So maybe there's that. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but why is it important to be black? I don't know why it'd be important to be any particular race. Um, we simply are what we are. Like, I think it's more important to build a society that is equitable, for anyone along any reason. So I don't know. This is very odd, but thanks for having me here.
I'm trying for an icebreaker, right? Something to get people talking, to lubricate.
No, this isn't exactly the type of thing an awkward white person would ask a group of black people. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
We'll talk about later some of the clickbait titles I was thinking about, but if we want to rile people up, but yeah, we'll get into it, I'm sure. But thank you for being here, Prime, and hopefully it'll be an interesting discussion. Next up, the second time on my show, first time on my panel, Rico. Hello, what's your thoughts here?
Evening, y'all. I'm 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝍍𝖜, but y'all can just call me Rico, known by as Rico Rants. And to answer your question, I personally don't care about being black or black identity. That's what I want to be clear about. That I personally don't. I am black. I will never, and no one can take that from me, no matter whether I act black or anything such like that. But as a society, I don't think it does matter, and I don't think we're ever getting away from that, because it's just too ingrained in our both our racial and national identity. The history and all that stuff. There's just no getting away from that. And even though I advocate for colorblind solutions to racial disparities, I could never say that our racial identity doesn't matter. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Thanks for being here, and I'm curious to see where the discussion takes us. Next up, first time guest on my show, but he's called in before. That one guy. What you got for us?
How you doing? Well, I guess I'm that one guy. Honestly, my identity as a black man, it means a lot to me. It's who I am. It means a lot about my experiences. It means a lot about my family culture, how we live, how we treat each other, our family dynamics. When you see me, I expect you to kind of notice that, like, just based off my skin and also where I live. These things, they kind of compound against one another and kind of mean a lot. They show a lot about who I am and where my present life is. In other cases, I think it's just like stereotypes, unnecessary jargon. But to me, it means a lot about how I feel about myself and how I feel about those around me and who I love. So it means a lot to me.
Thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go through the panel. Appreciate it. Next up, the only person who doesn't have a camera, 𝙎𝙪𝙗.
Boo this man. Boo him.
Hey, how are you all doing? It's the undefeated champ in the building. So I'll start by telling you guys this. We as black people here in America are moving in a very weird direction. About 20 or 30 years ago, and that's not that long within the context of America, especially race relations here in America, we did not care as much about race as we do now, right? So I'm not entirely sure, and I have my theories as to where that's coming from, or and where that will lead us eventually. But I say that to say this, right? I have kind of an inverse feeling where when I was younger, being black played more of a factor. But then now that I'm older, I don't care nearly as much, right? I care more about class, culture, religion, um, educational attainment, IQ, things like that. I don't care as much about another person or my own race as I would have when I was younger, or as my contemporaries do now. So that's all. I'll leave off right there because I have a lot more interesting things to say.
And with that, yeah. So now that we kind of have a
hold
general,
on. Before you go, I feel like people didn't really engage with your question, or at least the people who tried to engage with your nonsensical question didn't actually answer your question.
Did I answer? I like to think I did.
Well, okay. So it seems like people answered the question, why is being black important to you? Right? Like, or like, what does being black mean to you? And those are fine questions, right? But look, ask something nonsensical. He asked, why is it important to be black in America? And I don't think people really answered that, like,
that's fair.
Yeah. Like, so I'll direct that to that one guy. Why is it important to be black in America?
It's important to be black in America because there are preconceived notions about what it means to be black in America. So as me as an individual being a black man in America, it means a lot for me to stand on my own ground and show people that, yeah, I'm a black man
But
in America.
if there were no black people in America, like if it was just like white and Chinese people, I'll use Chinese, Chinese people, and people of Latin descent, right? Would America still be America? Or is adding the black part important for America?
But
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, if I could hop in there, there's a lot of like, just when you look at it, when it comes to music, culture, entertainment, hell, half of like the lingo over the last 20 years, from bling bling to doing the dab, ratchet, anything like that. Some of the shit you hear in Twitch poll was inspired from urban and hip hop culture, black culture.
Rock and roll.
That's terrible.
Rock and roll.
This
I mean, not really.
I think
not really. Hold on, real quick, because if it's bad, influence is everywhere, right? We should want to influence people. I mean, look at most black people love Japanese culture. We fucking love the shit out of that, from cosplaying it to like wanting to eat ramen to everything. You know what I'm saying? Especially most kids have a little phase that they go through. It's nothing wrong with influencing culture, but that's what we provide. You know what I'm saying?
But I know what you're saying.
Our flavor.
What you just provided me is completely insignificant. So, like, you said that our contribution to this country is like a few words, a lexicon, some music.
There's more than that.
Great, but that's what you just said. And I mean, I think, and I believe it was Malcolm X. If I'm misquoting him, then maybe I apologize. I believe what he said. Hold on one second. I'll finish this point. I believe what he said is that like when black people like are asked like who are the thought leaders within our community, we bring up musicians, we bring up like actors and comedians, right? But we're not talking about politicians. We're not talking about intellectuals or anything like that. And to say that like the important reason to be black in America is so that we can provide white people with
I'm not gonna name the outliers and use that as the definition, right? I was going with the low-hanging fruit of what things we are known for, right? These are the things on the masses. Why would I use the very niche things, right? I mean, yeah, of course, we want to, I mean, not academics, but like even across the thing, there's more like successful athletes and their geniuses out there, right? Like these are why we covet it. This is why we hold on. This is why we covet intelligence so highly, because it's not a good thing, right?
You said like athletes.
We really don't, bro. Like that's a part of the cultural component here in our community. We don't covet these things like intelligence, ingenuity, creativity.
I'm not talking about in the community. I'm saying in general. Humanity covers. If you could take a really strong person versus somebody that makes something brand fucking new. Like you take the Elon Musk versus fucking the Mountain from Game of Thrones, who's our Eddie Hall, right? Elon Musk is more. There's more people that know Elon Musk for being intelligent than the Mountain in Game of Thrones.
They don't know him
being
for being
strong.
intelligent. They know him for other fucking reasons.
It doesn't matter. It's you're being
okay.
semantic.
I want to give some other people
But,
some room here, some other people some space to kind of talk about this, right? Rico was trying to get in, so I want to give him space too. Then I'm curious what Izzy and that one guy think about this, right? Go ahead.
Sorry if I seem pensive. I've been trying to get this shit to work on my end, and like my audience says, they can hear me clearly, but not y'all. So that's why I've been up here just tweaking around, and it's just fuck me. This is why people hire sound directors and the people who handle the fucking social media shit. This fuck. But what I was trying to say is the very foundation of our national identity was was not just our breaking away from the British, but most importantly our civil war with the Confederacy. Where the Union, again, maybe not always in practice, the founding ideals are all men are created equal, and the foundation of that was they were referring to us equal to the black people equal to white men. Obviously, that the definition has changed throughout the years, blah 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 blah. But there was black people are on the Confederate side. Black people inherently are inferior to the white man, and natural place is to be subservient to the white man. And then the Union says, "Fuck no, they are equal. They are equal." And that, I believe, that is to America is why being black is important and foundational to our identity. Is that right there is what defines.
Cut out because he cut out for me.
They got him,
The
gang.
ancestors didn't want him to speak. They cut him off.
Can you repeat your last sentence?
Yeah, can you repeat your last sentence?
We didn't catch
It cut out. It cut out, didn't it?
Yeah, it cut out.
I'll summarize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it keeps happening. I don't know why that's happening, but I'll summarize with this. Fucking Confederacy believed that black people were naturally supposed to be subservient to fucking white people. Union said, fuck no. All men are created equal. And that in and of itself is the very foundation of America's identity. And just to be clear, I know we didn't always get it right. Like America, white men, yada yada, didn't always get it right. And we still got a long ways to go. But black people that's why being black in America is so important, because it is the foundation of America's identity, of America's creed, of America. That's my point.
Okay, thanks.
I'm gonna go next really quickly because when PrimeCayes says no one answered the question. The question was, what does being black in America mean to you? Not was whether or not being black was important.
I did phrase it weird.
Say that. That's not what he said.
I did phrase it weird. I want to hear Izzy and I want to hear from Izzy and that one guy before we get to the actual meat of the discussion here.
So it seemed like Prime's frustration was already with the initial question of why is it important to be black in America. It seemed like there was an issue with that question, and I do think that it's kind of it's a weird question. But and then on top of that, when asked for examples of why, we're another retelling of the fact that the scars that we got from the Confederacy and slavery and whatnot is a big thing. It is important to discuss those things, and then we get into talking about the musical cultural influences. It just sort of makes it sound like black people are just another flavor to add to this America's melting pot. It doesn't seem like we're actually getting to the core of the actual question, which I think I kind of agree with Kai that for starters, it wasn't actually what we were here to talk about, but I also think that it sort of defeats itself a little bit. I think, it's important to talk about being black in America. It's important to kind of rise above a lot of the conditions that came with it. But I think the leaning in on the importance of just being a race kind of can horseshoe around back to being kind of racist. And I think that's kind of connects to what we were initially here to talk about. We can get a little too on the nose about.
I did ask it to kind of, again, ice break and find out if you even think being black is important at all, and to be black.
It kind of is just sort of. Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be trashing you.
No,
like,
it's trash it. Trash me.
It kind of is.
Go ahead. It's my fetish.
Don't worry about that.
It kind of is by necessity, right? It kind of is because of history. It kind of is because of the way that we were inducted into the country. We were. It matters because it's something that, you know, can't really be taken back. I mean, it could, but it wouldn't be pretty. But it is just important, yeah, because of our history. But I think that now we have to it's more about just sussing out, well, how do we deal with modernity? Are we going to deal with it in a colorblind way where we just, you know, decide, okay, well, you know, you're going to treat them like some guy that you're walking past in the street, some guy you've been at the supermarket, somebody that you went to school with or whatever, or is rigid, like, really firm racial awareness in every single situation? Is that like a good thing, or is that something that can kind of exacerbate like racial tensions and actually like extend how long those things stick around for a lot of people? Yeah.
That one guy, did you have anything to say? Then I wanted to move on with the.
I mean, pretty much popped off right after I said what I was saying initially, but there's two words that I use that I thought are very important: individuality and preconceived notions. There's more than two words, but I don't think that you guys took those two as strongly as I meant to represent them. How I feel is, for me, I think as a human being and as a person in the world, you're an individual. You should have your own thoughts, and I mean, I don't care about any of that. You do you. But for me as an individual, it means something to me. But it means something to me because there are preconceived notions that come with it. And a lot of y'all hit that. Y'all hit that there's something that's always going on in like the social economic structure of the world and what we're thinking about and how we're feeling about specific races or people. Like right now, you can say Asians are on the rise in media. So now there's something that we talk about all the time. And that was Black people for a long time. So for me growing up, it always felt like, yo, I need to be me. But I need to also understand and know that the world will see me as a part of a whole, as a part of an entire group. But what I mean to do and what I want to be important to me is that I am an individual in said group, just like how it works with stats and just like how it works with anything else, math and society, laws. They're a group of them and they all have their own individual spectrums. I'm an individual in a group and I want it to be seen that way and known and noticed. And that's why it means a lot to me to be Black, because I'm an individual who's part of the group.
You're a little low.
Yeah, I've turned it up as much as I can on my end.
Yeah, you're a little low. So if you could, work on that.
I was going to say,
you could just stop being a degenerate and like turn your microphone up. It would help all of us.
No, I heard.
Yeah, I heard him. I understood him.
I heard him, yeah.
I heard him too, dog. Why you get it? What are you doing? Darius, why don't you turn on your camera, man? Why don't you turn on your camera?
He's too pretty to be seen. All right, he's too pretty for us.
Rico.
That one guy, to what you just said, fucking, I want to build off that a little bit, right? Fucking another. I would say another. I understand individuality and wanting to be seen as one, but there are, you know, different denominations, ethnicities, whatever. Nationalities that are, you know, that people follow that qualify as Black or whatnot, but us specifically, I assume we're all American, right? Like all of us in here just from born and raised in America. I think somebody said they were an immigrant. I forgot who. But
sure.
Yeah, whatever. But my point being is this, right? Fucking America for the longest fucking time, right? As I said before, did not always live up to its creed. But the ones leading the charge to make it live up to its creed, to make it become America, truly the land of the free, truly the land of opportunity, this, that, and the third, have always been Black people. You know what I mean? Because we were always at the forefront of the fight to make America be the America it claims to be, that we all want to believe that it is, or that it can be, that so many people in the world believe that it can be. And so that's another, I would say, just to build off that, is that to be Black in America, to be Black and American is inseparable, right? Like America, you can't because I remember earlier somebody said, like, imagine if we weren't here, right? It was just, you know, Hispanics and Chinese. Then it wouldn't be America. It would be something else.
It would still be America.
It would still be America. America prides itself on being a melting pot, an amalgamation of different cultures, and the cultural mosaic across the globe. I mean, we would still be America if we had an influx of people of any race, creed, or color. That's like the dumbest thing that I've heard so far.
No, it would be something else. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, let me know what it would be.
It wouldn't be America as we know it. It would be something else.
Let me know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, yeah.
I agree with that statement. It wouldn't be America as we know it now, but it's still America.
Yeah. Your audio is much better now, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't know what you changed.
Literally,
I took off my
headphones. I encourage you to change your microphone.
I was saying, literally speaking, if they wanted, the founders decided, it was somebody else instead of black people, right? Instead of black Africans and whatnot. Sure, literally they could still call it America. Everything could still hypothetically go exactly the same way, hypothetically, but we're not doing that. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about what America would be if it was something else, because it just wouldn't be. It wouldn't be America as we know it now. It wouldn't be America as it's been for up to this point.
Okay, let me ask, because you mentioned something I think that was interesting, and I think that segues into the main topic, which I want to get into now. You said that Black Americans have always been at the forefront of the fight for what it means to be in America. Do you think that is true today? Do you think that racial issues, right, are or should be at the forefront of what it means for America to be America? Do we think that, how important are racial issues today in America for you?
That's okay. So let's start off with the first part, right? I think you said you said something about other racial issues and such. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding the question. You asked like 4 different questions.
Again, I was trying to, I do that to get to the main question, which is at the end. How important are racial issues in America today? How centered should we be on racial issues as a nation?
Oh, okay, that's much easier to answer. I am of the belief that we can have it both ways. With regards to acknowledging the racial disparities, for example, but solving them in colorblind ways, because when we try to solve them in
what does that mean to you? Solving them in colorblind ways, what does that mean?
Income-based solutions, right? Because then you're targeting the social position that people find themselves in, rather than targeting the race, but still solving the racial disparities. Because, for example, when you try to solve the problem in a racialized way, like specifically targeted racialized way, every time we tried that, there was backlash, a racial backlash, like white backlash. Like just the most recent example was with regards to black farmers, right? I can tell you right now, even white farmers are just like family farms are fucked too, but black farmers had it even worse, right? So the Biden administration came out, was just like, trying to a kind of reparations of sorts to give black farmers the support they need, but that got stalled, or I'm pretty sure just outright fucking stopped, because people came out fucking saying, no, this is anti-white discrimination, and so it's gone nowhere. But if they focused on, say, income instead, it would still target the same people, because that racial category by and large falls into the lower income strata. And you could just build from there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that there's certainly would not be still.
Well, this gets to the heart of it. Let's get to the heart of it. Do we agree with this?
I actually have an example of where that counters everything through the state. Oregon, during COVID, they had the Oregon CARES Act, where they gave grants to black families. All you had to do was just apply, to give a Facebook, some ID, and it was two grants, I think. One for like 3,500, and then another for 1,500 during COVID for black families that were going. And I think the website is still up, the Oregon's CARE Act and stuff like that. But yeah, it got backlash, right? But it depends on who's leading the ship, right?
Right.
In Portland, Oregon, we got that led, and I'm sorry, Portland is racist as shit. Oregon is racist as shit. I know we paint ourselves as liberals and stuff like that, but that is the biggest lie has ever been told. I'll be like, yo, Portland is the city you go down, and everybody got a Black Lives Matter sign on the front lawn, but they've never met a black person in their life. They've never worked with one, co-work one, kissed one, anything like that.
It's all the performative virtue signaling that we see from middle class white people all the time who live in the suburbs, who never live in the hood, who don't have many black friends, who their understanding of blackness is rap music, LeBron James. It's the same performative, theatrical, internet shit that we've seen time and time again. These people mean nothing in the grand scheme of things, and we all know that, and it's deeply offensive as black people. So if you're a white person out there, and I'm looking into the camera right now, if you're a white person out there doing that,
turn it on, 𝙎𝙪. Let us see it.
Fuck you. Big beard ass.
I kind of want to piggyback off of the last two responses a little bit. I think that, like, number one, you're kind of right that I think that the people, especially, I hate to say this, but especially white people, they kind of have like this like flanderized version of what it's like to be black in America, what it's like to just be black, period, and they just sort of they see it as that way, and that's their understanding of the issue. Like, it's not totally their fault. They don't have that experience, and so it kind of leads to a lot of these issues not being dealt with. So when we talk about racial issues in this country, that is a big one. Is that it's not actually being assessed properly. And Rico, I think when you were talking about colorblind solutions, I kind of like, yeah, focusing on income and like class-related stuff is actually a really big thing. I think that, like, as big an issue as racial issues might be, a lot of it is stuff that can't really be done anything about directly that has occurred in the past, and a lot of there are a lot of bigger things that we actually need to tackle, like wealth inequality, healthcare, especially like mental health, like that would be a huge help to like the homeless.
Huge one.
To the homeless, to the homeless population in this country, a large chunk of which are black, like and like
I'm gonna put you like this. So,
I think a lot of those things. Oh, go ahead, Prime. Sorry.
No, sorry. I talked to you. You don't have to apologize to me. But why is it wrong for white people to initially be performative and their support of black individuals? Like, you're talking, what you guys have said is that there are a group of white people, and there's a lot more of us of them than there are of us, right? Except for here, Wick. Watch your back. But like,
you outnumbered here, motherfucker.
Don't get stuffed out, Wick, on your own stream.
There's a lot more of them than there are of us. So it makes sense that there are groups of white people, especially in our segregated country, groups of white people who don't actually know a black person, but they may have the intuition that, hey, like, I think black people shouldn't die, right? I may not understand their struggles as well, but I can go from the base principle of like compassion. Myself, I'm not gay, but and growing up, I didn't really know a gay person. Doesn't mean there aren't gay people around me, but like, I didn't really interact with gay people. But later on, once I like got over my parents' bigotry, right? Like, I decided, hey, I'm like pro-gay. But if you had asked me, like, what was it like to be gay in America, right, and have like a detailed answer to that, I wouldn't be able to provide that for you. Was I wrong to have that kind of support? Was that support not valuable?
No, I think that's baby's first steps. That's just how it is. There's always going to be that growing pain period of like just learning about these issues and realizing how much that you actually have to grasp when it comes to these things. And then the problem is that for a lot of people it stops right there, and they'll be like in their late 20s and they don't have a nuanced understanding of how these issues actually break down. What do we actually want to solve to help people out in these positions?
Americans. Do you have a nuanced understanding of the struggle of Native Americans? Like, you've been...
I do not. I don't. No.
Yeah. So hold on. Why not? Hold on. I just really quickly. Why don't you have that? You've been in this country long enough. You know that Native Americans have suffered incredible bigotry and loss, right? Persecution. Why don't you?
I think mostly just because that. Oh, I mean, sorry. I'll answer the question, then you can go right after me. That's cool. Yeah, no. I mean, I think mostly because there has to be like a real desire to actually want to delve into that criteria, to actually want to dig into that history, and to get and to actually develop that understanding for yourself.
You don't care enough. Got you.
No, I think yes, 100%. But I think the problem isn't just like not having a nuanced understanding of it. It's constantly having your voice be out and heard about it, but you don't actually get like those issues. Like you won't catch me out. You won't catch me out here saying things about Native Americans because I'm not like a.
Yeah, because you're not a Native American. Interesting.
Yeah, real quick. It really comes down again to where you come up at, right? Because again, Native American stuff, all that shit is heavily taught here in Oregon. The Oregon Trail, all that shit is a big part of our local history. So I would say myself, I don't find myself somebody I can talk on it, but I do know about it. That I'm sure a lot of black people up here know about it, right? But this is another thing to touch into. Like, it all comes something 𝙬𝙚 said about bigotry, like him growing up, about him not, being a part of the, being a part of the LGBT or stuff like that. I was quite the opposite. Well, I'm not a part. I'm a straight man. I'm a straight cis man. But as a kid, right? Fucking brushed my little cousin's hairs and fucking played with Barbies, right? Was never met with any kind of fucking bigotry from my family of like, matter of fact, I had cousins when we were kids. We knew they had a little sugar in their tank, right? And we knew they were going to grow up to be a certain type of way. And they did. They grew up to be,
What does that mean?
They're a little sweet, you know what I'm saying? Had a little sugar to the tank. They grew up to be gay, you know what I'm saying? We knew this as kids, but they never were. I mean, they were picked on, but they weren't like, oh, we're not going to touch you. It's really about.
You knew that somebody could be gay at 7 or 8 years old.
Okay, Guys, stop. No, hold on, gang, hold on. I want to recenter this, right? I think we're getting a little way, but Rico and Izzy both have made something that I think got to the core of what we're going to talk about, and we're kind of ignoring it, really. And I really want to kind of put a spotlight on it. They said that to deal with racial issues, and you guys can correct me if I'm misquoting you or if I'm getting this wrong, but to deal with racial issues, it's better to do it through an economic lens. To deal with you will solve racial issues better if you tackle it through income than if you do through race. Is that accurate, Rico and Izzy? Is that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And on that note, I did want to go say one thing before we go back to that. Was with regards to like performative support, performative anti-racism and whatnot. Look, I don't expect, and I don't think any of us should, any person who doesn't have a vested interest in someone else's well-being to give a shit in the most nuanced fucking fashion, right? I don't like if you don't live next door or like close relationship to a black person, I don't expect you to care to the same extent you would like your own family or friends or the neighborhood that you do have and whatnot. But at the very least, I put it to you, and I'll end it with this: is I don't care if it's performative, because any one less motherfucker, any one less white person, for example, supporting bigoted policies and shit is a win in my book. Like if it's even even if it's just performed, like they got the BLM signs but they don't actually know any black people. So long as they're not going to vote and or support, specific policies or structures that would hurt us, that's a win in my book. As far as I'm concerned, they don't have to know black history.
See, that's the thing. When they get to that point, they don't. These are the people that are hiring. Like that are hiring. You brought it up. There was a conversation that was brought up in WhickTV's channel about names, right? My name is. I have a very white sounding name. My brother, on the other hand, has a name that ends with Farrakhan. Okay, because his dad is from the nation, right? So fucking he has a hard time applying for jobs, right? We actually switched our credentials. I have a lot of like higher up management jobs and stuff like on my resume and shit like that. Switched our names on it. He took my experience. I took his. I got the call back, right? Because my name is extremely white passing. Yeah. And so when these type of people that do the performative arts, right? These are the same people that have the sign, but when they're behind closed doors or behind a screen or anything like that, and they see fucking a Jamal or a fucking Brandon pop up, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the
Somebody
thing.
named Darius.
All right.
Still, at the end of the day,
No,
they're
I
still
can,
going to pick the Brandon over the Jamal. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I wanted to speak
that
on this
leads
really
on to
quickly.
what I wanted to talk about in the first place.
Please,
I think
go
it's
ahead.
all just a social thing. Like you can talk about like money and monetary stuff, but I think the root cause and the root issue is it relates to our social world, how we speak to one another, how we see each other in the world. I don't think it has anything to do with how much money we make. I think that's just a illusion to what the real issue is. I think it's how you raise your kids. I think it's how you talk about race in the household. I think it's how they talk about race in your school. I think it's how they teach about race. I think it's all those things put together. It's not a simple just one note, oh, money, do that there.
Well,
Oh,
no, that's,
talk to your
I
kids
want to
when
be.
they
We're not
start
talking
I want
about
to
asking
be
money.
clear.
questions about
Really
this there.
quickly, though.
I do want to be
because
clear.
I
I
don't
do.
want the
We're
I just
talking
want to be.
about voting right now, and it's
No,
the
no.
people that, yeah, like
I want to
are
be clear
changing
on that.
policies.
No, I just want to be clear on that. When I say, I want income-based solutions, I'm not discounting all the other factors that play into combating bigotry and racism and whatnot. I want to be perfectly clear on that one guy. It's both. You can do both, is what I
Yeah, but
say.
even then, like it's a structured order to things, in my personal opinion. So like
No,
if
that's
you
it.
want to talk about how you're gonna like stop things in like in law, in my opinion, those things they reflect what we have in our society. There's a reason why these things are passed. There's a reason why these things are inactive. It's because of how we act as people. They don't
How would you
I
legislate
don't
that out of curiosity? So that one guy, so I understand what you're saying about how it's starts with the social, how people talk when they're behind closed doors, how they talk to their family, how they raise their kids and things like that. But when it comes to actually making policy, whether on an institutional or a legislative level,
Mhm.
how do you tackle that?
You
What would
tackle that with the simple
your
fact that we
advocacy be?
actually care about ethics, your race, your ethnicity, and all that in today's society. You use the stats that you guys brought up, which was everything other than race and ethnicity, and you include race and ethnicity. That is how you figure out where the issues lie in our society. That's how you figure out where things are wrong. That's how we know that Black people in America are shot more based on the percentage of how many Black people are in America. We know that because we study for it. We look for it. If we were just doing it on money and we left that part out, like how colorblindness wants you to, then we wouldn't have those stats and we wouldn't know the exact reason why the issue persists. Then we can start building policies after we have all the information. You
Yeah,
have to
that's
do the analytical processes, you have to do the research, and you have to know what research you're looking for in order to get those resolutions, in order to
you
find a
can
good resolution.
you can still get to come to the exact same conclusions though. Like just as an example, the majority of people abused by police are poor people, and the majority of poor people in America are Black people. You
Hmm.
can come to the exact same conclusion even if you're coming at it from a different angle. And what I'm saying is I'm trying to avoid the long-standing history of backlash that stalls and outright stops people actually trying to mend the disparities that are created by those, by race. You know what I mean? Because before, for example, like just as an example, fucking yeah, with 60 to 100 plus fucking years ago, they were explicitly racist in our structure, like from laws, everything explicitly racist. But then they weren't anymore. But nothing was done to undo the damage that was done to us, and so the structures persisted.
I don't
However,
think that's the only reason, though. I also
no, no.
believe you can change something structurally, but it doesn't change the minds of the people within the system.
Well,
The laws are not enacted to change the people. The laws are enacted to pretty much fix the problems between individuals. It's not the opposite way around. So when that became an issue, then it became okay. We tackled it backwards, in my opinion. But that's because we had no choice. We forced it. We wanted it. We needed it, and we pushed forward every single time to get that and to get any type of work done. We did it in the civil rights movement. We did it, and we this is what we do, right? We stand up when something happens. We push out. We go to work. We protest. We fight. That's what we
I
do, and we
find
get
it
shit done.
interesting. I find
But
it
it's
interesting
never
that
changed how people thought about us.
I
It's
find it
never
interesting
changed
that
how people acted
Rico,
towards us. It's never changed the fact that if we had a
Ri-
nasty name, we probably wouldn't get a job first. Or if somebody called and their parents just so happen to name you LaQuisha, you're probably not going to get called in for an interview over someone named Amber or over a Taylor or over Cassandra. It's just
right.
that stuff hasn't changed because we haven't changed how we teach people about race and ethnicity. And living in a colorblind world will never do it.
I find it interesting
Well,
that
hold on. Yes,
Rico
I think.
goes to an example of
Hold on.
like
If we lived
he
in a
talks
colorblind
about
world,
how like he's afraid of this backlash, and that's like the thing we have to be avoidance of a backlash. That there's some sort of political backlash, and so we can't go for exactly what we need. Instead, it's about like hopefully being palatable to a frankly shrinking minority of white individuals who might have a problem. So like appease the racist, and so that maybe we can get things done. Interesting.
Well, I think
I was
I
gonna say
don't
this
think
really
that other
quick.
I want to
ethnicities.
give
Hold on,
space to
I'm not done.
Ardarius here.
Hold on, I'm not done.
After you're
I
done,
don't
Prime,
think
I want to give space
I
to
don't think
Ardarius
that I
after.
don't think other ethnicities actually do it this way. But well, whatever. And I think it's also interesting how you framed it, talking about like, oh, well, you know, black people are poor, right? And so if you want to target a problem, just look at poor folks. Well, and specifically brought up police shootings, right? Well, do you think well-to-do black people aren't pulled over by the police? You
They
think
are.
that money protects us from state
No.
violence? It generally
Yes.
doesn't, right? You think it does? You think money
Protective
protects us
factor.
from state
It's
violence?
a protective
That
factor.
guys in
It can be a
Bentleys don't get
factor.
pulled over.
All right.
Like,
Actually, he just hit a
okay.
point. He hit a point there. He said it's a protective factor. This is where you
Yeah.
jump back to the stats. It's a protective factor. And then if you look at the stats, black people that have just the same amount of money as a white person, if you have 38 million in the bank, he got 38 million in the bank, you are still more likely to be pulled over for the car you drive in than that white man is, because the social stigma still exists. That's
Yeah.
the point.
But I
Is
also want to bring this up
But
really, really quickly because I was going to say this, and I'm going to say this really quickly, and I'm going to say what I was going to say afterwards, listening to Prime. That if I'm not mistaken, affluent black children who grow up in the upper class or upper middle class are still disproportionately more likely to go to jail than their white and Hispanic counterparts. Is that because of social historical connotations with race here in America, or are there systemic cultural issues in our communities that need to be addressed? To where these suburban upper middle class black children feel as though they're not black enough, not hood enough, not thug enough, not ingratiated enough in our culture, to where they have to act in a way that is more palatable to more black people.
yeah, what I wanted to say to PrimeCayes is, again, I want to be clear to everybody here. I ain't here to fucking. I ain't making no assumptions about any of y'all positions. I'm not gonna fill in any blanks for y'all. Whatever you say, but whatever you didn't say, and just fill in the blanks for you, put words in your mouth, anything like that. I'm not going to do that. If you want to do that, go ahead. But I'm not doing that to y'all. So.
Didn't
So
I
with
just
that,
repeat your words back to you?
you
Like
did
I
not.
repeated.
No, you
Okay,
added.
all right. Well then,
You
all right.
added.
Then, please,
then
then tell
then,
us exactly what you meant. If I got it wrong.
yeah. The idea that I'm saying we need to placate the racist is not what I'm saying. That's not what
What
that's
did
not
the backlash mean then? Then I didn't
the
understand.
back.
Please explain.
Then I'll address the elephant in the room. The Republican Party, yeah, the hold that like I would say explicitly racist white people have is dwindling, but that hasn't stopped them from maintaining power to do structures that largely benefit them over everybody else.
So you're worried about racist
And
white people, which is what I said.
no, I'm not worried about racist white people. I'm worried about
But then you brought up racist white people.
I'm
Let him
worried about
finish.
I'm worried
Let him
about
finish.
I'm worried about an institution that unfortunately doesn't like, and for all throughout our history, just does not like targeted racial policies, especially as it pertains to black people. And the way around that, because again, as my example brought up with the black farmers thing that got completely shut down, is you can solve that problem. They argued anti-white discrimination, which was correct. You know what I mean? Yes, that's what it was. And
I'm sure that's not the
you
case.
can
give us more example in that black farmer thing? Because like I'm googling it now. I don't know what you're talking about. So if you can give us more details, maybe we can actually discuss it.
That's about the gist of it. Like that's
what is
happened.
it? You gave us nothing.
The Republican Party argued that it was anti-white discrimination.
Is it though? What is it? What is the legislation?
That the targeted legislation that was meant to aid black farmers, like give them basically reparations, was discriminated against white people.
Okay, and reparations for black farmers. I'll look for that.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, okay, so the Biden hold on, there were no reparations for black farmers, but the Biden administration did provide tax breaks and I think grants to black farmers to rectify socioeconomic inequality here in the
Yeah.
United States. So yes, that was, I'm not gonna say that was reparations, but it did rectify a historic inequality of Black people. So yes,
they tried to. Yeah, it happened. Or at least they tried to make that. I don't know if it finally went through. But the last I saw of it, the shit got stopped in its tracks because of the argument that it was anti-white discrimination. And
sorry. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I'll just finish with this then. Basically, my point is that I'm not trying to placate racists. I'm trying to work around them. Gotcha. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to give them a viable legal argument that they can use to stall any progress we try to make.
Sure. That's literally exactly what I want. So you don't like the word placate, right? They're like, oh, we're going to work around them so they don't get mad. So we don't have a backlash.
I don't care if they get mad.
Which is what I said before. Like,
I don't care if they get mad.
You seem mad by the words, but like my words like clearly encapsulate.
Come on. All right, now we're just doing semantic shit.
Well, hang on.
Semantics actually do matter.
But I'll give it to you.
Changes one word to the other.
No, but I'll give it to you. You're right. I use the word backlash, which is fair to say that I'm arguing that I'm worried about their anger. I want to be clear. I don't give a fuck if they're angry, and I think most of us don't. Most people don't.
Well,
that's not what I was saying.
I'm going to tell you why I disagree really quickly. We live.
Then after Darius goes, I want Izzy to go.
We live in a representative democracy, and we live in a multi-ethnic society. So I'm sorry, but when we're only 14% of the country, we don't get to make demands without other people's input. That's just not how a democracy works. That's not how a representative republic works. So yes, to a certain extent or another, we have to care how they feel. There's no other way around that.
Fair. Which is, again, trying to make both points at the same time. Is that yes, and I personally don't care, but we do have to care. Like, I get that. You know what I mean? We do have to factor in their feelings and how they're going to react to what we do. We can't pretend that they don't matter, because they do, and they do still have a strong enough hold that they can stop us in our tracks when we try to get the legislation that we want.
I don't understand how you can articulate that, but you don't believe it yourself.
No, sorry.
So wait, real quick. I just want to say, and the thing is, the backlash isn't just coming from the racists. It's not just coming from people who are like very clearly out and out bigots. It's gonna come from, like, if you're passing legislation that provides targeted, economic or some sort of welfare towards, specifically Black people or any demographic, a poor demographic, you're gonna have people who are also poor of different demographics that are going to be feeling left out in the dark. They're going to be feeling left completely unsupported. And so this is why we focus on coalition building. This is why we say it's not like to compromising with racists to say, yeah, we should do more to help more poor people. It's not just it's a good way of, policy building. Yes, you're going to get more people behind it, but it's not something that like we're I don't think that's placating racists. I think that yes, there will be racist people that will be against that any sort of direct care to any demographic, any particular, racial demographic. Sure.
But also the people who feel left out.
Yeah. But what's happening is half measures is what you're talking about. Is like you're excusing half measures. And so, like, yes, indeed.
What if the full measure doesn't get passed?
And so what happens is that like Black people can never get their issues like fully addressed. That's what happens here. And then what we're told is that you can get this half a quarter of a pie, right? And that's all you ever will get. Right? Rather than actually demanding, we have a Democratic Party. Hold on, we have a Democratic Party that shows up every fucking 4 years or every 2 years for the midterms, and pretends that is for Black America, right? That's like literally scared right now because it's noticing that more Black Americans, male Black Americans, are voting for Republicans or just like staying home. Right. And the reason why that happened is because exactly what they've been offering here. Either it's just an income-based solution that doesn't actually tackle all the problem, that leaves so much of us behind, or we don't even get it at all.
Wait,
right?
Prime, so, just real quick. Prime, are you saying that male Blacks are voting for Republicans more because Democrats are going for income-based solutions rather than racial solutions.
Not even part of it.
Did you not listen to what I said? I'll repeat it, right?
Please.
What I said is that our
he's saying that we don't go. The Democrats don't go far enough. And that's not enough for people.
Don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it.
Go ahead.
No worries, right? So what I said is that our issues aren't ever addressed fully, or oftentimes addressed at all by the Democratic Party, and because of that, a lot of people are becoming are apathetic, right? Or some people, like a small number, it's not like a huge amount, right? But there is a shift where some people are like, "Oh, just vote for the other guy." It's really that simple. If you address people's material needs, then they will want to vote for you. They want to put you in office. And the Democrats have failed again and again. And what I see here is apologies for that.
Darius, go ahead. Darius.
I want to respond to this problem case because the conversation itself is about moving towards a racially conscientious, racially colorblind society. And within the context of everything that you said, it makes more sense to me to move more so towards a colorblind society. Here's why. Ideally, right, we would address people's needs as far as their material conditions and their social class goes over things like their, I think their social class is more important than your race as far as your religion, creed, culture, familial upbringing, geographic location. All those things are more important than your race to me, even though race is still important.
Yeah, that's a dumb thing, but that's dumb because when you analyze, and someone else had brought this up previously, right? But when you analyze a problem, there's a problem in this country, right? Let's talk maybe homelessness, right? Talk about a problem in this country, and then
thank you for the raid, Stardust.
It's a group of
Stardust. Thank you for the raid.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, so there's a problem within this nation, and then there is a group of people that's being affected by the problem. And like, if you just have a quote unquote colorblind solution, just treat everyone as people, right? You might not be able to understand why.
In a representative
regularly are a bigger proportion. Sorry, hold on. I'm talking. Are a bigger proportion of the homeless population. This is why, like, this nonsense about like, oh, yes, just be colorblind, keep people, right? Like, that's a perfect way to make sure black people never get what they need.
In a representative, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this really quickly though. In a representative democracy or any other form of representation, not a single special interest group gets all of their issues met and addressed. Not a single one. Not the queer community, not big banks, not big pharma, not a single person, not black people. We are not exempt and special in that reason, in that way. So when you're saying that, this is a perfect way, in a colorblind society, it's a perfect way to where black people don't get their needs met. I mean, that's just not ever going to happen with any other group here in America at all. I feel like it's more important for us as black people to focus more so on culture, class, and material conditions over our race. We need to detach from our racial identity and focus more so on assimilating into American culture, because we still have yet to get our cut and portion of the pie. And I feel like our attachments to our race is cutting into that.
You have a kindergarten understanding of race in America. You have a kindergarten understanding of race in America. That's exactly what's happening. You can't understand. You literally can't understand how race interacts with our society. You really can't understand. You don't understand how the history that shapes our present. You don't take any of that into consideration, right? We're all colorblind. It'll all shake itself out.
All right, Poof.
I understand.
No, you don't.
Poof, I wanted to say to you, you made a great point with regards to us being a representative democracy. Fucking, think about it. Like, say we were 13% of the population, and 14. Just 14, and of the many fucking barriers to our getting the accurate representation that we have, like namely a lot of places, especially places surprisingly with the majority of black people gerrymandered to fuck. It reduces our voting power and our influence and whatnot, thus keeping the people who, because that's the thing you're not factoring in, PrimeCayes, is that you say it's the Democrats not going far enough. You're ignoring the agency of the people who oppose the racialized solutions. They're there. They're not going anywhere. And we have
there's
factor that in.
opposing parties.
That's
wow,
why
amazing. Thank you for
that's
educating
why,
that there's opposing parties.
You got let him finish.
That's why we don't get.
I didn't think of that before. Thank you.
That's why we don't get all of what we want. It's not because the
Democrats
don't give a shit. It's because we have opposing. It's because we have actual active forces.
Individuals who could understand that yes, within
active forces that are getting in the way.
That within a democracy, that not everyone gets 100%, right? And if you thought that was the bar that I was setting, I'm sorry. I thought that like I didn't have to explain that to you. But that's okay.
That's the bar you set. You can ask all you want.
Don't worry. I got you. Look, you've already said enough, right? I get everything that you're about. But anyway,
I said enough.
Who? Bro, I'm talking to you.
You've been really I'm talking conversation.
Anyway,
okay.
Right? Yeah, I get that. That's adorable. Look, you got, like I said, kindergarten understanding of race policy, right? Yeah,
bro.
I get that there are opposing policies. I get that within the context of creating legislation, right? There's always going to be a level of compromise. I can understand that. Don't worry, I've been doing this long enough that I get that, right? I assume that you knew that too, but apparently not. So don't worry.
Okay. Enough of we've measured each other's dicks. Okay, we've decided which one is bigger. Let's move on. Let's get to some other people here. I want to give space to some other people in the conversation. I think Majin has to dip.
No, I don't have to go, but I might.
Okay,
my brother
if you
went
do,
up there right now.
I understand. You got some issues going on. I get that. If you do need to dip, just let me know, and I'll try to give you some space to get an outro. Okay. I want to hear from that one guy, and I want to hear from Izzy. That's who I want to hear from right now. What do you think about what's going on? Like, why
go ahead, one guy.
Yeah, why is so that one guy? You seem to be opposed to kind of colorblind solutions to things. Why? Can you kind of explain it to us? Can you give us the main reasons here?
I think that I think the more data that we have, the better. I think that a lot of the things that we're even arguing about now, we only have the data and research for those things because we take race and ethnicity into consideration. When it comes down to just the city that you're in or the state that you're in, being poor in that place, yeah, you're a part of a percentage. 30% of the people in this place might be poor, right? Of that percentage, how many of them are Black? If you find out that there are higher percentage of them are Black, and then that promotes more analysis. Now you want to know, well, why is that the case? And then that is how we bring up legislation to change and to help and to fix things. You start with information and you dig further. If we get rid of ethnicity and race, then we start doing things based on an overall percentage. If you make a change based on the fact that 30% of people in a state are poor, and you leave out the fact that they are all of different ethnicities, live in different parts of that state, they might be in a small town, they might be in a big city, if you leave all that information out, you make a change that could negatively impact a larger stratus of people. And that's not good. That is why we do research the way we do. That's why we study and we make analytics the way we do. To leave out race is idiotic and it makes us all look dumb.
Izzy, why are you for more colorblind solutions?
I'm for them, but I can sympathize with Prime's anger towards the Democratic Party, just feeling as though that they can just decide to just do something for poor people, and that it's not really recognizing and thinking that's going to be good enough to do something for Black people, and not really recognizing that you're not fixing the underlying issues. This is kind of why I wanted to break it down into like a variant solution that also addressed stronger mental health institutions. This is a huge boon for a lot of the homeless people that are around. A lot of help for healthcare. I think that there's a lot of people everywhere here that one bad bill from the hospital is going to completely fuck them. Their whole year is completely fucked. And then something to do about criminal justice. There is definitely there are interactions that happen there that are not quite replicated, that are a lot more high stress than they are in the rest of society. And these are things that we can they don't really necessarily get addressed as well. Sure, there's a lot of crime in the black community, but I don't think that means that we can't actually ask there to be a better way to handle those interactions. I think that throwing money at the solution, it's a colorblind solution, and I'm sure I like that it addresses class and whatnot, but I understand why that can seem like a really inadequate way of going about dealing with these issues.
Which is $5. This five. I'll let you go. I'll let you answer this one first, 𝙍𝙬, $5. But I gotta make my money, gang. Okay, $5 from Cryborn to ask which is more important, class or racial identity. Go ahead, 𝙍𝙬.
As of today, I would say class over racial identity. But even though racial identity is still important, right? But I do think that race and class are not necessarily divorced from one another. They're not dichotomous, and they are usually intertwined in some way. But I feel like if we focus on the issues of the issues of class over race, how poor people are more likely to go to worse schools, they're more likely to have worse nutrition, they're more likely to have worse, educational outcomes and worse job attainment as a result of that. They're not able to move the socioeconomic ladder as a result of these things. I do think that creates an issue in society. But again, class is on the class intersects with race here in this country more than it does not, right? So I think that class is more important, but race is still a very important issue here in the United States. And I know that we don't want race to matter. It does. Ideally, we would live in a colorblind society where this wouldn't be an issue in the first place.
Ultimately, race shouldn't matter, in whenever it does, but there still needs to be that problem that's fixed that was kind of caused by another group of people that is in our community and keeps being set on our community by new policies and shit that ends up happening, and whatever happens, we could call it. We've seen it. I'm 38. I've been black every single day of those 38 years. You know what I'm saying? And seen it's just never changing. It's always an excuse. It's always like, hey, you need to do this. I don't know, man. I think even more so, we need to make sure more than ever that we gotta be black. We got to keep our black issues strong. We can't just give in to the whole hey, we should just do it for the poor people. We have seen this nation. What do you think they did for the Native Americans? What do you think, reservations and stuff like that, giving power back? And then, yes, they could be a failed experiment. I don't know too much.
Do you think reservations have helped the Native American population?
Native American reservations were objectively.
No, I'm saying that I don't want to. I don't want to speak on their policies as an expert, but we got
sure we understand you're not an expert, but I think this kind of brings to the heart of it. Do you think that by for example, that very targeted racially aware solution of reservations, do you think that's helped the Native American population?
I've seen good cases of it, but I don't think those good cases are the definition of it. You know what I'm saying? We have this place called 𝙎𝙪𝙗𝙧𝙞𝙗𝙧. I probably butchered that name. It's just right outside of 45 minutes outside of Portland. And it's on reservation land, and it provides for the schooling. Everybody up there gets a little lump monthly stipend from them if they're part of the tribe that's with it. The place is growing. It's seeing a lot of growth. So I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. It's the thing with marijuana when we legalized marijuana in Oregon, right? Shit, it made a ton of money that went straight to the state. There was a lot of things it was funding, but wasn't an overall good. I mean, I think so. I love me some weed.
I wanted to say on that note, with regards to my proposed solution, the reason why I say you got to work around them and such, right? Think about how they got us. I think it was Lee Atwater who said, we can't say you can't say N-word anymore. So they targeted our social position to get the same effect. They targeted
stuff like states' rights and busing.
Yeah, states' rights and busing. They targeted our position to get the same effect. And I'm saying, why don't we do the same thing to target the position to get the same effect?
Yeah, you're really dumb, though.
But it's not. It worked.
Yeah, but you said
it fucking
like
worked.
that was a dog whistle to like, hey, let's attack. No. But that actually was a targeted attack. That's the thing. No, when they don't call us N-words, they call us thugs. That doesn't, and a thug can be any color, sure, right?
They don't even say thugs.
You understand
anymore.
They're talking about black people.
They don't say
when you're addressing these things, you have to be able to target.
They might say something like delinquent.
You can say all kinds of things, but those things aren't actually colorblind. That's the point. But you pretend that they are.
Or the one that
they're pretending as they are, though, PrimeCayes.
The liberal, the white racist favorite one.
These unreasonable conclusions.
African American.
What was unreasonable about that?
Ādarius, can you repeat that? Ādarius?
I said this is why it's hard to converse with PrimeCayes, because he has these very unreasonable responses and these histrionic answers to things. And it's like he never said that they wouldn't call you thugs or whatever, but that doesn't. I mean, if they're calling you thugs or criminals or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a racially colorblind society. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
What are you talking about? Hold on. That's not what I. Hold on. You're completely lost. I didn't say we're in a colorblind society. I didn't say any of that. All I said as an example. Hold on. You didn't follow the conversation, so I'll do it again for you. I said as an example. Right?
You're not rhetorically effective. That's your problem.
He brought up states' rights. He brought up something else. I forget which one it was, but I brought up a third example, right? And I was juxtaposing that to the rest of it, saying that understanding that when they say thugs, that they actually are meaning the N-word, right? A thug could be colorblind,
a thug could be a white person.
What they pretend to be, but yeah, I get it. I'm laying it out for you. I'm laying it out for you so you can actually understand, right? So I'm juxtaposing that, and I'm saying that despite them saying that, we understand the actual heart of the matter. If you're thinking of
I'm
sorry, then go away. Then get off the panel if you can't handle it. Get off the panel if you can't handle it. Calm the fuck down. Get off the panel if you can't handle it.
I think you failed for what we call the 𝙎𝙪𝙗𝙧𝙞𝙗𝙗 pump fake. In the words of my friend Solus the PG, we call that a pump fake. All right, and I think you fell for the 𝙎𝙪𝙗 pump fake. He's good at it, man. He'll get you worked up.
Go, Rico.
Yeah,
Rico. Go ahead.
He's good at getting people worked up.
Rico.
You're not nervous. This is not me worked up.
You're not worked up. You're just an asshole, and you need to dial it the fuck back.
I'm sorry. Look at you, right? I guess you're new to this, right?
I'm new to this.
No, don't worry. Yeah, that's right. I am an asshole. No, that's right. I am an asshole. I can actually
right off a cam.
I can actually defend my point. I didn't have to call you out your name to do it, right? But don't worry. If you want to take it down, I'll take it down. No problem. I'll do that with you. No problem.
I'm telling you, dial
no
it the
problem.
Fuck,
I got you. I know. Hey, buddy, you ain't in charge of me. I do what the fuck I want. You can't handle it. Get the fuck off the panel. Get the fuck off the panel if you can't handle it.
Okay.
You're not intelligent.
No, I'm not intelligent.
Oh no!
I'm just trying to talk about racial issues.
You know who else they called unintelligent?
With your bitch ass, like understanding of the basic reality of America, right? We have a long history of inequities, right? And your point is like, what if we pretend? What if we cover our eyes? It's not happening, right? That might do it. That might solve it, right? What if we cover our eyes?
It would be great if you could find a way to like bring it back to the topic, my friend.
Hey man, sometimes you gotta let it go. You know, this is pig and slop right now, baby.
Okay. I have another question. Okay.
Go for it.
Well, first of all, $2 from the Trib one. Prime is a thug. So is Wick. Everyone else is okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. We're bringing it back. We're resetting. I'm resetting. Let me ask this question. Everyone, shut up. Okay. Let me ask this question. How have you personally either benefited or been hurt?
Just bring your Timbs into the camera. No.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
How have you personally either benefited or been hurt by racial legislation, whether it be racial legislation intended to help or that you felt held back by a systemic injustice? Either one. You can give us both if you'd like. So, yeah, go ahead. I want to start with that one guy and work our way around.
Oh, very well.
Unfortunately, I don't know as much about this one, but
no, I'm just asking, how have you been hurt by either some kind of either a policy or legislation that is racially aware? So, for example, affirmative action would be a racially or racial preferences in college admissions would be a racial awareness kind of policy. It might be good or a bad policy, but it's a racially aware policy.
Well, to me, it was actually kind of like very. You're all familiar with the No Child Left Behind Act, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
so the way
that
played out, the way that played out in certain school districts in America, in certain places in America, it had very interesting outcomes. When I was in school, unfortunately, because of the area that I went to school, it had a very active effect on how they taught the children. One, we all had to be on the same level. So even if you were smart, even if you were very intelligent, intuitive, you were not really allowed to move up. You had to take a placement test outside of the school. Those numbers you would then bring back to your school, and then they would adjust you per pretty much whatever their little doctrine, however they did it. But it wasn't as easy as it was as when I moved. When I moved to another place, it was the Heights is what they called it. I could go up based on my performance. So I was always really good at math. I never got anything under than an A on math. And the moment I got to Heights, they gave me a placement test to see how I scored in every single place. Social studies, math, English, science, so on and so forth. I got really high score in math, and they put me up 2 grades higher than I was when I was in my last school district. That benefited me quite heavily. But what I realized very fast when my dad moved and I had to go back to that school district, they wouldn't do the same thing. They wouldn't even give me the option. And being able to know more, being able to learn more, being able to have that under my name when I went to apply for colleges would have been very nice. But I wasn't able to get that. And that constantly affected me. It actually affected even my work ethic. I kind of just stopped caring just as much as the people around me did. I tried to make friends, and by making friends, I had to go outside and not go straight home after school. It changed the way my daily dynamic manifested because I was trying to become a person in a different environment, and that environment meant I had to sacrifice certain things, and one of those things was my education. And that I think that impacted me quite a bit. Like, I'm a lot older now. Life is life. I was younger when that happened. But it definitely affected not only the route that I took as I grew up, but the fact that I had to learn a lot of things the hard way because of it. And
yeah,
I
maybe
think that
I'm missing it.
A lot of people.
And forgive me for my ignorance if I am, but how did race play into that?
Well,
because that was a question.
Go ahead. Right? You said you researched it, so you know a lot more about it than I do.
I haven't researched. But I had 2 foster kids on the same subject, right? So Lincoln High School here in Portland, Oregon. It's a high end. It's like it's a public school, but it's in downtown Portland on the West Hills. So a lot of rich white kids go there, right? They're very prideful in their numbers. Like they have like a 90%, like 96% graduation rate, right? Well, my 2 sisters, they're twins, ended up going to that high school. One of them, like all twins, one of them's a little bit slower than the other one. Birth, problems. One, they're all premature.
Is that a twin thing? But go ahead.
It's a twin thing, yeah, because one in the womb starts to kill the other one. Like they start stealing nutrients, like survival of the fittest. I don't know, but that's usually why they have to go in, and they're usually premature. So Brianna, she's not. I wouldn't. Why said her name? My sister. She's not necessarily slow, but you could tell her she's not as sharp as the other one. The older of the 2. So once they got into high school, because they're so of their stats, and I just have to assume they were assuming based off of their race, because it wasn't their middle school test scores, which one of them was on an IEP, an individual education program, where they actually changed the curriculum for students and stuff like that. The other one, 4.0 in fucking middle school. Great student. They tried to put her on an IEP. They were like, one of her teachers was like, why are we even trying to do this? She's a genius, First day of school, like I got a call in the morning from the special eds teacher, talking about you know, maybe inducting both of the girls into the thing. And I was like, he's just, you know, giving me a courtesy call, you know, like he's the special ed teacher, right? I'm like, cool, whatever. I know Brianna's gonna have to, God damn it. Sorry, and she's listening too. I know one of them's gonna have to end up, you know, on one of them, right? What tripped me out is at the end of the day, he called me about both of them, and he was adamant on both of them, right? I mean, I fought tooth and nail about it, right? And one of them didn't end up getting on an IEP, right? But he tried it and kept trying it. They both have graduated now. One of them graduated with honors and all that stuff. Like, they both graduated fairly great, but one of them 4.0, right? They tried to stifle her at the very beginning of it, right? For whatever reason, there was no, like, it was the first day of school. There was no, like, how do you know what their education's gonna be? But why are you calling me to put both of them on an IEP and in special education? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I don't know. Well, fucked up.
Anyone else want to share a story about this, or should we move on?
I hate No Child Left Behind, but that has nothing to do with race. That's just bad law and bad public policy. But we can move on from there.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think you would like to see? How do people like me, right? What is the most frustrating thing discussing racial issues with people like me, right? Like what frustrates you the most about it?
Let's not be coy here. Let's not be coy here. Yeah, when you say people like you, you mean white, don't you?
I do.
Okay, well, so I mean, so let's not be coy. Let's just use words, and let's use words in the way that we mean them. You mean talking to a white person as a black person about race, right? And when I'm talking to white people, a lot of times they're just racially ignorant. And I don't even mean that in a condescending way. They're just not as abreast on racial issues. Hell, even the class issues half of the time, and they have a very poor understanding of what struggles of black people in America is, right? So, or the things that we go through. So the most difficult part to me is to get them abreast upon what we deal with, on terminology, on what they can do to help. And you're thinking, damn, this person's old enough; they should be more racially conscientious at this point. But I do respect the fact that that most of the time people are willing to learn, they are willing to hear people out, they are willing to look at the content of your character, not the color of your skin, and that they aren't complete assholes when you do want, and they are open to having these conversations in the first place.
Any other answers? I have another question. If this is a silly one. So.
No, yeah, I mean, I would say the most frustrating thing is especially if you're talking to like someone who's particularly like culture war poisoned, is you're kind of working backwards. You have to deconstruct a lot of shit, and that can be frustrating. For me, I don't really, I personally am not frustrated, but I can understand why that would piss off, like, because you're dealing with somebody who's like already working from a bad conclusion and firmly believes in that conclusion, and then you have to deconstruct that before you even get to where you are. You know what I mean? Like, where that's a lot. That's a lot on people, and I get why that can be frustrating.
Noted.
Yeah, it can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it can. I think it's mostly just, it's like a lot of awkward interactions, a lot of awkward conversations. I think the toughest part isn't even necessarily like the any particular white person's ignorance on on that issue. It's their first time like trying to actually like advocate and finding that they might end up fumbling a little bit. They might not have, maybe they don't have their data correct, or maybe they don't remember like important historical events that are important to that particular issue. It can be kind of awkward, and then you're on top of possibly facing backlash from obviously like maybe more conservative people who either don't care about those things or think they're overstated. You might get backlash from the side that you're trying to advocate for, where if they feel like you've misrepresented them, it can be kind of, you're getting it from both ends there. I think that the best thing to do is to kind of don't try to overstate or overrepresent like your knowledge on a particular topic. You just recognize where you are on a particular issue regarding a certain demographic, and don't try to overextend too much. That's really I think the best thing that you can do. And this can happen to black people too, because we're not the only demographic that's been marginalized. It can happen to just about anybody.
Fair enough.
So It's I think your question, you phrased it as people like me, right? And then
White
Max, to
people.
clarify, you said white people. I think your question is really anti-white. I think that when talking to white people, like I wouldn't lump all white people in one group, right? I wouldn't do that. I think that the frustration comes from like where they are in their political ideology. So I think centrists like you, Wick, I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating because you have already given the same brain dead answers that Rico and the other dude have given, right? Those are all your points. We've discussed them before in the past. So I think that like it's about starting principles. I think that there is like a cohort of white individuals who like they want to learn, right? They start from a level of compassion and they want to understand these racial issues, and they can and maybe not initially though, but if you talk to them, they can understand the importance of how race intersects with politics. And then there's others on the far side of it who are specifically like from a cultural standpoint don't want to understand it. Like they specifically part of their identity is that like I'm going to ignore these things. And then there are centrists like you, Wick, in which your ideas
Please
are
tell me
that
more about what I
I don't
believe.
want
Go
to
ahead.
offend either side, and I want to take ideas from both sides, right? Rather than actually addressing the issue on its face. So I think centrists can be extremely frustrating, but it's not the fact that you're white, Wick, right? Like the failing is your political identity.
Well, it's because I actually question your statements and just don't take them at face value. That's fair,
Absolutely.
right?
That's exactly
That's
what
fair,
it is.
right? That can be frustrating. I understand when I just don't believe
I'm-
you and take your word for
Yeah,
it.
I know.
I get
but
that. That could
here's
be
the problem,
that could be a
Here's the problem,
problem.
Wick. You never
but-
actually look into it, though,
But
right?
no,
Like you
no,
said,
I
like,
do.
you don't
This
believe
is
me,
okay.
and that's fine.
Okay,
That's fine
okay.
If you don't, if it's fine if you don't
We're
believe
changing
me.
the
But if you
dynamic
don't
here.
actually
We're changing the
look into
dynamic
it.
here. I'm going to ask just bluntly: do you all think that perhaps by using a racially aware lens that you were simply perpetuating the problem with race in America, you will never be anything but your race because everything that you advocate for is based on racial lenses?
The first half of this question was so much better. I mean, but when you say things like when you'll never be anything more than your race, I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and no one actually believes that, right? No one's a racial essentialist in like 2023. But I do believe that we are perpetuating negative stereotypes and negative caricatures of ourselves as Black people when we care this much about our race. Sure, history and culture matter. Sure, historic socio-political connotations matter when we talk about race here in America. But when we say things like or will you ever be anything more than your race? I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
I think
I left, so I wanted to answer both questions if possible, like the other one that I missed. But for me, I think it's communication in general is really hard for certain white people. I think the way that parents raise their white children is predominantly the reason for that. I think it's how they instill in them like certain ideas about what race is and the casual need and like just simple interactions between like when a kid comes up and they want to know what color they are. How a parent answers that question manifests a lot of how they feel about it. By like that, I think it's by the time they're 1 year old, they already correlate one race with being better than another. By the time they're 3 or 4, they already correlate sad music with an opposite race in their own. Like, and by the time they're 5 and 6, they start looking for friends that are of their own race more than they do of others. And how you navigate a child through this process is when those numbers start to change. So I think it's definitely how you raise your kids, how you really express what race is to people. So I think people just honestly, they just don't know what race is. They don't know how to live around it, so they don't know how to talk about it. And that makes conversation between two people of opposite races very difficult, whether you're Black and Asian having a conversation or Muslim and white having a conversation. It's going to be difficult. It always is, because people aren't teaching you the correct ways to navigate it.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
Say, yeah, I was clarifying here. For those of who didn't understand, when I say race essentialist, I mean people who think that the essential fiber of your being is your race, your racial classification, right? So you're more than just that. right? That's what I mean by racial essentialist. Very few people, now I wouldn't say no one, but very few people in 2023 are racial essentialists, right? That's all I'll say on that.
Okay, I guess my struggle here, and this is maybe a me problem, is I want race to matter less than it does now. Like, this is my whole goal. This is what I advocate for. This is what I want. I want to live in a world, right, where if I walk into a room, no one judges my positions or judges me based on simply the color of my skin, right? No one assumes things about me just based on the color of my skin. I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that would be a better world for everyone. If no one, when you just go on a panel and they see you on the panel, they don't automatically assume your positions on things. Because you know that happens, right? You know that as soon as someone gets on the panel, based on the color of your skin, they're going to assume a lot about your position. I want to move away from that. So I worry sometimes when we constantly reify race, which isn't real, right? We constantly reify this social construct that we're keeping it alive well past its expiration date. It's like a zombie because we keep referring to it. We keep casting spells at it, right? We keep kind of like advocating for things that will make it so we can never get away from this. And why am I wrong? Why is this something that explain to me my mistake, please.
I don't really think you're.
I agree with your position. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Izzy.
No, it's cool. I don't think you're wrong. I think that we all saw a really good example of kind of what you're talking about, where where race kind of is a lighter fluid to a particular situation. It was the bike nurse situation from earlier this year, where it sort of became like lines were drawn and sides were taken on that issue, particularly because of the race of the two involved and the fact that there's a history of like white woman tears potentially getting black people, particularly black men, into a whole lot of trouble that they may not have necessarily deserved, and the facts of the case were not actually made to matter at all. We have the information there. This is all electronically. This is stuff that's electronically tracked. There might be a few details that need to be worked out here and there, but there were battle lines drawn, and everybody knew where they stood on it as soon as they saw the color of the people involved, and it just sort of seemed like, well, this is something that we can break down and look at in a much more I think clean, objective fashion, and we just decided not to for a lot of issues that had to do with history, with race. I think that that's a really good example of of racial awareness actually kind of blinding us. It was not a good lens to be looking through.
Well, I was going to say that I'm going to answer your question.
Well, I want Rico to go after you, though. Go ahead.
Why don't you go after me, though, Rico? I was going to say, Wick, that I kind of agree with that position. I mean, I don't want to walk into a room. Like when I was younger, I grew up the town that I grew up in is predominantly white. And I could walk into a room, have like me and mostly white people, mostly white friends, and they're asking me about Obama and what I think about Trump, and Trump's not really a racist. And I'm like, well, this conversation was about football or fishing. What does Trump or Obama have to do with any of these things, right? So I guess they assume that I'm going to have a very specific emotional reaction to either one of these figures, and especially after me when I was in the army. Like just because you're black, people feel like it's okay to say we're not on the block anymore, or it's okay to say things like, what do you think about this new policy about shaving profiles? Mostly black people have shaving profiles, not white people. I was like, I don't want people to presuppose my answers on the basis of my skin color. I want to live in a world where we're more racially conscientious, and we get to the point where we are. Or we do not look at other people's race, right? So that's the word. I mean, I get these things don't happen overnight. These are incremental steps. We have to become more racially conscientious to live in a society where we don't care about race.
So we have to be more. That doesn't make sense to me. We have to become more racial conscientious so that we are conscious about race.
Understanding. To have a better understanding
to avoid it, to
race.
Not do it, yeah. Because I mean, like there's positive versions.
The end game eventually is to not care about race.
There's positive things, or positive version of those insertions, right? Like of those stereotypes that people look at. It's not always negative, like, oh, like this black guy's on this or on this panel, so he's gonna have the black opinion, right? Like there's also good versions of that where people look at him like, I don't know, I'm half Samoan, you know what I'm saying? And people look at me, they'll be like, you're half Samoan. I'm like, yes, I am, sir. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause I'm a big guy. You know, it's not a negative thing.
All you Samoans are huge, man.
You know, so it's, you know, I don't think we could ever really get rid of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, as long as there's a positive version of it, it's always going to just keep getting.
So even would you be okay though with everyone simply assuming positive traits to you based on your ethnicity or skin color? I don't know if that's good either. No, I think that's also a pretty bad word to live in.
A common expectation for black men, especially, actually specifically in this case, is that we all have, you know, massive dicks. You know what I mean? And that, you know what I mean? And the reason why so many, I remember reading.
I had to.
I remember reading something on this. I can't remember exactly what, but basically the person said this: that the reason why so many black men cling to that notion is because
benevolent racism. It's benevolent racism.
It's a kind of benevolent, because with a history of being derided and demeaned in every way, shape, and form, something that is yes, still racist, but a positive racist trait is something. It's just something to feel good about. So we'll when someone asks us, assume, well, yeah, of course, you know, because even though it's racist to assume. And to your question with regards to how to get to a less racially fucking stigmatized society, fucking there's a study conducted, I remember, where, and it was I can't remember what kind of immigrant, but that doesn't really matter. Point is, it was white people, and then there was another demographic. At first, you know, there was apprehension, but after prolonged exposure, you know, they no reason to fucking believe that this person's a threat to them. The biases and stereotypes that they had in their mind just kind of melted away. You know, they just thought it goes away through prolonged exposure. So in our unfortunately extremely still segregated society, to get to the point that you want to get to is going to require vastly more desegregation than what we've done.
I said something really cool, guys, because we're all, I think everybody here's a 90s baby, maybe late 80s baby. We watched these Nickelodeon shows and these Disney Channel shows growing up where they would just like throw in a black character and they have a black scent. And you know what I mean by a black scent, right? So when I say I want to live in a more racially conscientious world, and we get to the point where we no longer care about race in the ways that we do now, where we live in a more colorblind society, I don't want a black character to exist for the sole purpose of them being black. Right, and you all knew how offensive that it was deep down. Like, I know I'm not the only person that felt this way.
Why? There's been great characters in media, like
they weren't even all great.
Even like
that's not even you know that's not what I'm talking about. You know that's
Adam
not what I'm talking about.
𝙬𝖫, the Blue Marvel.
T'Challa is different.
All right, Adam 𝙬𝖫, Blue Marvel.
Yeah, no,
okay. Outside of comics, motherfucker, you know what I'm talking about.
I used to feel that same way when I was growing up, bro. I used to always just want to see more black people and stuff growing up. I actively remember my favorite movie for a long time being that Princess and the Frog movie that came out, because it was similar to the older one that had a white woman in it, but this one was like, it was fresh, it was new, new setting, new place. That movie was amazing.
If I could hop in real quick after he does.
Sorry, that one guy, finish your point. And then,
But like, I think I think, like I said before, I think all this stuff starts when you're really young. Like, from the things that you see to like how people talk about it around you, it's just they create things in your mind. When you're a kid, you're the most influenced by the world around you. You pick up on things and how people react to them, how they teach you about them. They mean a lot about who you become in the future. It's like, and we live off that. We live based off race. You can't deny the fact that it exists, so you have to teach people to live around it correctly. And we act like we can't have a conversation about it. Every time you mention just small things, somebody's real quick to bring up racist. Like, how many times did Rico was speaking for like, what, 2 minutes? He said racist like 5 times to like 5 different things. It happens in natural conversation. That makes people not want to talk to you about anything involving race. it's difficult to engage, let alone to hold a conversation with people when you're talking about something that's uncomfortable for one of the parties.
Or something that they
I
don't
think
even
most white people feel uncomfortable talking to black people
I'm glad
about
you
race.
used the word.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
No, just real quick. Just stop.
Yeah, go
stop.
ahead, Adar.
Stop. Everyone
Yeah,
stop. Everyone stop. Rico has to bounce, so I want to give him a quick outro. So go ahead.
Okay.
Rico.
Fucking thank you all for having me. This was a fun conversation, and y'all have given me much to think about. I'll say there were some things I would say hadn't considered, but I will recalibrate my mindset on this. And if anyone's interested in talking to me in private, I do my show. I talk to people one-on-one about anything and everything. So if anyone wants to hash the shit out with me in private, or not private, but I'm talking on my show, you can find me at Rico Rants or on Twitter, Rico_Rants.
Rico Caps got line.
Rant is what I do. That's the talking, ranting, yada yada yada. But all the same, seriously, this has been my first panel in a long fucking time. Like, it's been years since I've been on like a group panel, talking to a bunch of fucking people at once, and I forgot how heated it can get. So on that note, I want to say, PrimeCayes, I am sorry for calling you an asshole, because I forgot that
that was a spark, my boy. It went up after that.
I'll give you all the smoke.
I thought about. I've been thinking about. I was just like, I forgot this is how panels are. It's been like I said, it's been years. I haven't done this type of shit, and I typically don't. I don't get heated. I don't fucking do this, that, and the third. So that's why I was like, oh, okay, you know what, fucking. And by the way, you don't have to accept my apology. It doesn't matter.
You don't have to apologize.
I'm saying no, you're fine. You're absolutely fine, dude. Like, and trust me, I've been on panels. Wick has been there with me. It's got much more heated than this. But I know
it gets more heated than this.
And I really liked talking with you. You have a different perspective, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, right back at you, brother. No, as I say, but it gets more heated than this. Holy shit.
One of the criticisms my panels get is I shut it down before it gets too heated, right? So I don't let it go up entirely.
And I don't.
And also, Rico, it was nice meeting you. You were around my age, right? I was kind of sensing the old brother in you. You know what I'm saying? You in your mid-30s? No?
I'm flattered that you think I'm older than I am.
That's tough.
I really appreciate. I like it. I like that people consider me to be mature, but I'm 28. I turned 29 in October.
I turned 29 a couple of weeks ago.
Hey, happy birthday!
Okay, Rico.
I gotta go. Yep.
I'll see you later, buddy.
Peace out.
Have a good day, Rico.
I was gonna say this really quickly, though, Wick. And because I didn't want to derail too far from the conversation, but again, it's important to me that we reiterate that this conversation is about the dichotomy between a racially conscientious society and a society that is colorblind, right? A racially colorblind society, right? And I don't necessarily believe that these two things are inherently dichotomous. I believe that you can become more racially conscientious, and then ideally you want to get to the point where you're racially colorblind, right? But I think the end game doesn't necessarily need to be racially conscientiousness. I think the end game should be
it's a guiding stuff. We recognize we can maybe never reach that point. I understand, but it should be the aspiration.
It should be the end game. That should be the goal. Yeah.
I do want to bring in. Majin has a buddy backstage to replace Rico, so I'm going to bring him in.
Cool, Soulless.
So yeah, if you got a camera, buddy. You're live.
Hey, Soulless, you could turn it on, and like I said, Wick, Lactoid, and Doobie, everybody knows Soulless. Soulless is the champion of DGG.
Lactoid has a losing record to me in debate.
DGG, let's go.
Okay, but I want to kind of just
wait, DGG is crazy. Don't do that. Don't do
I want to ask the people who are more for colorblind a question, right? So for the more people who want a more colorblind kind of policy, what happens when we institute these changes, right? The colorblind legislation. What do we do when we do that? We implement it, and the problem either isn't fixed or it gets worse. So how do we fix that? Or should the fact that we are looking through a non-racial lens, to the morality of that, trump the results, is what I'm asking. So is your advocacy pragmatic, or is it moral in nature? Does that make sense?
I think all of us are going to say that our analysis is pragmatic or realpolitik, right? But I think that, and this is just my personal opinion here, that living in a racially colorblind society is possibly less pragmatic than living in a racially conscientious society. And I know how contradictory that may seem, but again, as I told you, the end game should be to live in a racially colorblind society, right? But I think that the opposition, if I were to steelman them, is far more pragmatic than mine.
I mean, I'd say, like, we've kind of already had this happen in some ways, right? It's like welfare and stuff like that for poorer people that is supposedly, colorblind, doesn't necessarily fix all of the issues that you have as a poor person. A lot of the time that can sometimes come down to them having like poor spending habits, or maybe they have picked up addictions for which they need actual help with, and there isn't like current support structure for that. Like, when we realize that we've in some way compensated or helped out in a way for a certain kind of issues, for in this case income, we realize we're not getting any better results. We just sort of have to shift over to something else. Okay, well, what's the nature of where things are going wrong for you? Oh, you have serious health issues. So yeah, sure, you might have a little bit more money in the bank now, but it seems to be going towards whatever health issues you might have. Maybe you fucked up your lungs or like leg or whatever. Like that's there's usually going to be another reason for that to be happening. It's all about just breaking it down further. I don't think we just give up completely on colorblind solutions just because they don't just because colorblind legislation, just because it doesn't fix the problem immediately. I mean, no one piece of policy is ever going to achieve that. I don't think we should strive to. I don't think one's more inherently moral or pragmatic than another.
To be fair,
I want to give the new guy.
I just want to know we need to outline what racially colorblind public policies mean.
Hey, I want to first, before we do that, I want to give the new guy some space to kind of.
No, I just wanted to know, like, why you feel that it's pragmatic to live in a racially conscious society. I'm interested in that. Why do you feel like that's a pragmatic approach?
Oh, you just in reference to me, or?
Yeah, you said that. I'm sorry. When he said like the opposition, you didn't speak. I thought that was your position. Am I mistaken?
Yeah. So my position is to live in a racially colorblind society. I think that's the end game for most of us here. But some of us, we have different ways of going about doing that. But to me, I'm humble. I'm honest. I think that it's far more pragmatic to see the phenotypical differences between different groups of people who may have a different history and culture than you. That's far more pragmatic to me. That's just. I mean, to me, that's common sense.
I feel like the idea that like people can see these things about each other that are different and that they've denoted is like that there's already like bad blood in the water about, but also have like some peaceful coexistence is crazy to me. That's why I ask, like, why do you feel like that's pragmatic? Because I feel like history bears out that that's not the case.
I mean, so my
can you hold on? Solus, can you? Is that your name, Solus? Is that how you say it?
My name is Solus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
I feel like race as a concept has existed way before anybody in this room. It's been around for a long time. It was solidified a long time ago. The idea that we can have it exist, have us have these differences, it already has its history. It's always been like defined. People know what they feel about it, how they act on it. The idea that we can have it exist in really any form or fashion, but somehow get along is crazy to me, because I feel like history bears that out. Like that is kind of the entire concept of race, is that there's this thing that we all denote to each other and we fight each other over it. Like that's the bare bones effect that race has. The idea that it can exist, but somehow have a different effect that we've never really seen happen that's why I said it's crazy to me. That's why I was interested to know, like, why do you think that that's a pragmatic way to go about things?
Well, for the racial, just real quick, 𝙬𝙗𝙧, for the racially, for the people advocating for more racially aware legislation, policies, etc., do you want to tackle that? I want to hear from Prime. Prime hasn't spoken in a while. Actually.
Oh, sorry. Does someone else want to go? Go ahead.
No, Prime. I'm saying Prime. I want to hear from Prime because you haven't spoken in a while.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Wick. Sorry. Yeah, I think and maybe I'm not fully understanding your statement here, Solus. So
explain it if you like.
I'm going to respond, but if I'm not hitting the mark here, then please help me out.
Go.
So it seems like you're saying that race in itself is like fundamentally oppositional, right?
Yeah.
And from there, that like we can't move on as a society without getting rid of race. And then if we did get rid of this idea of race, then we wouldn't see the opposition like between groups that we're seeing now. But and if that's what you're saying, that it feels weird because even before the concept of race, and race is a pretty new concept, right? It's 300 years old at this point, but it's a pretty new concept in human
500.
history. Before then, yeah, sure. Before then, there was like ethnicity, right? There was like nations, well, not nation states.
It wasn't
like,
ethnicity, Prime. I don't want to interrupt you, Prime. It wasn't ethnicity. It was the concept of what country or what city or what city state you came from. Right, so it wasn't necessarily ethnicity. Like these terms are very new, right? But just to give you just to correct one thing, race is about 500 years old, and before that, people cared more so about the nation you came from.
I want to hear Prime's answer, though, right?
Okay, go ahead.
He hasn't gotten to it yet.
Sure. Yeah. So in any case, like there were already like lines drawn, right? Like among, like for instance, famously among Europeans, they all hated each other, right? Every particular group in Europe hated each other, and that's why that continent is absolutely blood-soaked. So even outside of the concept of race as we understand it, we see these oppositions. I think race becomes a stand-in oftentimes for resource competition. So like it makes it easier to define that that's the out group and they're not going to get the resources, and we're the yang group and we are going to get the resources. But I think that even if we got rid of the concept of race, we would still like draw those lines for other reasons.
Know that I could like I'm glad you said that, because like that's a historical argument. That's why I like try to base a lot of my thought in. Like you're right, like there is a huge historical precedent for Europeans killing each other throughout all of history. Like they hate each other even till this day. But I don't really race. Even if you want to say that there would be other things we would fight each other over, I wouldn't fight you over that. Like history bears that out, but that doesn't change the fact that race is one of those things. And as long as it's a prevalent thing that we all like had, I don't think that there's a way for it to peacefully exist. If there was a way, if that was a thing that could happen, it would have already happened. What I'm saying is that history bears out that this thing, though there are many other things, this thing is definitely not something we can have exist, acknowledge about each other, and still get along. I just don't see that to be a
$10.
Well, the end game.
Let me make my money. $10 from Testicle Johnson to say, thanks to all the panelists, in 2045, white people will be the racial minority in America. As part of reconciliation and reparation, would it not be most pragmatic to enslave white people at that point?
What the hell?
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Hey, it's $10. I'll read it for $10.
Based.
So.
I swear to God.
And that's
I don't think we should enslave anybody on the basis of their race.
Not based.
That's absurd.
Not
either way it goes. I mean,
the point was making me $10 to read that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but just want to say this really quickly. Look, I agree with you. First, I don't know, I can't see your name right here, but I see you just came on. That Joe Lewis.
No,
look,
Solus. That's not Joe Lewis. That's Solus.
Solus.
Joe Lewis actually.
Sorry, Solus.
I just.
It's okay. You all good.
I apologize, Solus.
Good.
So the only thing that I was going to say here is, look, I agree with you. This is why my end game, right, is my goal, right, is to live in a society where racism does not matter, or it matters so little, and so where it's not as much of a factor on different people, a bunch of different ethnic groups, who is going to create tension between different groups, right?
Yeah,
so again,
I'm with you on that. I think that the only way, like the end goal, it should be to make I don't know the word to say this, but to like tabooize race, to make it be something like that's weird that you would bring up. That's I think the end goal. Like I agree with you. I think the end goal should be to get rid of race as a concept. And to be honest with you, I don't. Well, no, that sounds fucked up to say, but I just think we're gonna use anything to divide each other. I think race is a pretty stupid thing to do. So on, like it's pretty low hanging fruit, and I think the end goal should be, like you said, to be in a colorblind society where race virtually means nothing, and to bring it up would be a taboo thing to do.
Why is he wrong?
Initially, I feel
like
my first thought process about it, like even when I first found out about it and I started studying on it,
also
I was like, okay, this
piss, so be good guess.
Right. I'm like, okay, this kind of makes sense. Like I see the idea, I see what people are thinking about, but when it comes down to reality, it just doesn't float. It doesn't hold water. It's what's weird, I think, is like you can't really get rid of what people see. You can't really change the emotions and trauma that people tie to what they see. In my opinion, like society and human beings were fairly simple. Like our first issue was understanding and getting used to thy neighbor. So that's Europeans, for instance, that's Britishmen fighting with Britishmen. Then the next thing was getting used to thy neighbor when they don't look like you, when they don't speak like you, when they don't talk like you, and their culture is different. That's the next thing. And that's why Europe is so blood-filled, because they didn't figure it out very well. We still didn't figure it out when Africans started being enslaved and brought to America. And you can bet and guarantee America still didn't figure it out either. But we've come through leaps. We're doing a lot better than we did before. And I don't necessarily think that getting rid of race or considering it as a negative thing, you're doing that based on history. You're doing that based on where we've been. But not everything about where we've been is where we are. We change, we grow, but we won't if we ignore it. It will just become a normal thing that we all see every day, that we acknowledge, that we just don't talk about. And I think we already have a lot of issues because we see things, we know things, and we don't acknowledge them. That's not a recipe for success to me. That's not a recipe for growth. I think that just perpetuates the issue we already have.
I would say I'm not. So if theoretically, right, this is just me freestyling, if we could get race to the same way that like people would see judging somebody as like left-handed as some like demonic creature, if we could get race to that extent where it's like that's a taboo weird thing to do and only a very select few people even still believe dumb shit like that, that's what I would like it to be. Obviously the idea to get rid of it, you have to talk about it. It has to be a like collective thing we do as a society. So it cannot just, the idea will always exist. It's here and it'll never go anywhere. But if we could get it to a place where it's taboo, well, we acknowledge the history behind it. We acknowledge the pain that it causes in society. We acknowledge how stupid it is and how useless it is in many regards. That's where I want it to be. I'm not saying like we wake up tomorrow and everyone just like, that was a crazy dream we all had. Like, no, that wouldn't work. That would be foolish. I'm saying that it should be acknowledged in the end goal to tabooize it, if that's a word.
But why does it need to be tabooed is what I'm not understanding. Like,
that's what you're right. You're completely right what you said. My coming from that is that I just feel that if there was a way to healthily have race exist, it would have already happened.
I disagree.
And the idea that's what I'm saying is like, how many times you have to ram your head into a wall before you're like, okay, this wall, you can't break through it with your skull. Like, I don't, why do you feel that though all history says this, magically in whatever amount of time, it could be 10 years tomorrow, whatever it may be, that we're going to have this thing that's always been bad become this semi-positive thing or completely positive thing?
Well, I see it all as a timeline, right? So you have a whole, and then you have like when change starts. So if the timeline is like this line here, we got, okay, cool. Race has been a negative impact for a very long time. Then you have the idea of America right there, right? America's brought up, the American culture, American civilization, all that good jazz. And it goes down. The amount of racial problems still exists, but we've pioneered, we've fought, we've changed, we've grown. We're way better than we were before America even existed. And the only reason we've gotten this far is because of America, because of how we fought for our rights, because of how Chinese people came over here after World War and they started doing their thing, because Irish people, because we all came together here, we learned, we grew, we learned how to live around one another.
I can get behind
we have issues. Yeah, we're not doing great.
So,
but it's like,
you saying,
we're doing way better than we used to.
Just to be clear, and I want to get Joe Lewis here in a second, but I want to clarify for this. So you're saying that that America has been the leader in solving racism in the world?
I don't think we've been the leader in solving racism because we're talking about how we see race in societies and how it plays into like, well, how we do legislation and how we live. We're doing better than a lot of other countries are. Let a black man go to China and see how they treat you there. Let a black man go to Japan and see how they treat you there. Let a Korean or Taiwanese person go to China or Japan and see how they treat you there.
Why would they treat you negatively in China?
And they don't.
Like,
I've been in Germany.
It's not about.
I wasn't even about to go there with it, but I'm saying though, if I was to go to China right now and they were to treat me like a N-word, for lack of a better way to say it,
I'm not saying
why
how
do you
they
think that would
treat you.
happen?
I'm not saying how
Because
they
you're not a
treat
part of the
you. This is what I mean
You're
by
not
how
a
we
part of the
always
in
turn
group.
it into
That's why you're
something
not
negative.
ethnically Hans.
I'm not. This is what I mean by when I'm saying we always turn it into something negative. It doesn't have to be negative. You are making it negative based on how you feel about it. Now, I'm not talking about you in specific. I'm about to give an example. So when you jump into an example, would be like, say, so, okay, a black man goes to China. He's trying to find a woman. That's going to be very difficult. One black man is going to prescribe that to racism. Another black man is going to realize that in the culture he's in, he's not a commodity. He shouldn't be here trying to look for a woman unless he's expecting to go back to America. If you plan on living there and staying there and finding a woman, it's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be difficult just to move around, to talk to people, to have intellectual conversation, because people are going to have preconceived notions about what you are, and they've never seen a black man before because they were in China their whole life. That's different. And based on who you are and how you iterate that issue, you might think racism. Well, somebody else is going to think, well, this is the racial dynamics of this culture, of this place, of this continent.
I get that. I don't want to. I promise you, I don't want to interrupt you. I want you to keep going after this. But I think this conversation was within the context of a multiracial, multi-ethnic civilization that we do have here in America, not necessarily the ethnic homogeneity that is like a South Asian or a Southeastern Asian country.
But that's my whole point. That's what I mean. So it brings right back. That's why we're doing better. That's why we've made way more leaps, and that's why we're considered the lead, because we're the only ones that are doing something different to an extent. And actually, it shows through everything we do. It's like just when we were talking about the stats for how we figure out like what the percentage of black men that are in jail. We take race, we take ethnicity, we take where you live, we took where you grow up, all that together to figure out, oh, boom, we got some percentages, we got some numbers. We understand that black people are marginalized in multiple systems, and now we know why they're marginalized in this one in specific. You don't know that if you're living somewhere where we don't take those things into consideration because they're supposed to be blind to it. When we know already you cannot be blind to race, why try to normalize it, to eradicate it, when once you normalize it, it will never go away. It will be right there at the top of your brain. It's like
when
kids,
we say
like
racially colorblind society,
when you tell a kid at 3 years old he's black and he looks at his skin and he sees brown, that creates a different conformity in his mind. He's thinking differently than the reality is, and that's going to conflate his mind for the rest of his life. It changes how we see things. Same thing happens when a black kid is raised by a white family. If they're teaching you to be colorblind and to live colorblind, the stats say odds are you're going to have an issue with your own color and your representation within your own cultural group.
This perspective you have is very unique to the United States, right? Like me being in another country,
that's what I was getting at.
you have to explain. Like I was married to a German woman for 10 years, right? I spent a lot of time in Germany. I had to explain because my nephew, and they're white, right? I was over there. I called my brother one day, right? And I dropped the N-bomb, right? Oh my God, he said the N-word, right? I had to explain to him that how I'm a black man. I can say that, and the difference between the soft A and the hard R, right? But he didn't understand. He was like, no, you're an American. I was like, stop. No, 1 second. I am an African American. And when I heard that, I was like, what do you think your auntie is, right? She's German. I was like, you're right. But she's a white woman in the United States. Yeah, German sits second hand to that. You know what I'm saying? She has to then state to be like, oh, you're a white woman. No, I'm German, but that's usually how it goes. A lot of people over there don't get that concept of having that whole like black put on them and shit. Even when I was younger, like I knew I was African American, but at the end of the day, there was a distinct difference between my hood cousins and my grandma. You know what I'm saying? So like that idea that black label being thrown on you and having this like mark, or this impact on you could be, maybe it's because I'm light skinned and I don't have that, but I just don't see that as much as you do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and it could be
wait,
a perspective.
Black?
I just want to say
what did Solus ask? I'm
no, Maj, because me and Maj was talking about this. That's the homie. I'm trying to phone him. You saying that you feel like the label of blackness is not something that you experience when you're in Germany. I'm trying to understand what you're getting at here.
Well, like how he was saying that when he heard it himself as a child, that like that label, and I do get like talking to my little brother about this stuff, the impacts of like his perspective, because he is dark skinned, my little brother's dark. I was trying to find a place I could relate to the brother right here on what he was saying, but I just couldn't find that.
Because
he go ahead, Solus. Yeah.
No, because I just feel like what I was getting at with the question that I asked is that and this is what I've been told from folks that leave America and go to European countries as Black folks, is that a lot of the racism that they get fucks them up because it's the same racism that they got from home. The stereotypes that they got are from home. The way that people look at them is the shit that they say about them is from America. So I don't.
The first time.
No, hold on, wait a second. Though.
Okay,
like,
sorry.
No, because you said that you feel like we're doing really good in America, which I don't know yet. I disagree. Or
oh no, I don't think we're doing good at all in America.
No.
Talking about me.
Okay.
That was Gordon.
Finish your point, but then we got. I'm gonna have to ask a question and move this on.
I'll pass the ball in 1 second. I was just saying that, but if like that's what I was about to say. That I feel like that's a common experience of people that go to other countries is that they still have to live with the racist stereotypes that live in America. So I was just asking, like, why do you feel that if I was to go to another, like, it seemed like you were getting at that I would just be on the out group. It wouldn't be racism necessarily. It's just that I'm like not like them. But like I said, like a lot of people will tell you that the racism you experience is the same shit you got from America. It's not just you're out. It's that you're Black. It's not just that you're
me or him.
I think he was talking to me, but that was what I was saying about another thing. Before you got here, I was talking about how, like, I believe that most people, they contribute a lot of things to racism when they're not initially racism, right? So like our American version of racism is a little bit different for how we see it and how we think it enacts us in our daily life, and how we represent it here in America is a little bit different, I think, than how you're going to get it from China. When you go there, for instance, and someone says something, you're having a conversation and they do say something about your penis size. If you think that's racist, that's you. That's how you incorporated it based on where you came from, which is here in America. And you would say that's racist if some Asian person said that to you in America. But when you're over there,
why did they say it?
But that's the thing. When they're over there, the main media that almost everybody in the world is absorbing is American media. So they only know what they see through American media. And that's one thing. So when they say something to you about it or joke to you about it or something, to them, that's coming from complete ignorance. Just complete ignorance.
How is that not
racism? Then now you've given race. I think it doesn't prescribe.
I just want to real quick. So this is probably where I'm having the disconnect on this, because I don't see the racism like that the same way you do. Racism to me is when I'm walking down the street, right? Like they cross the street. You know what I'm saying? Or when I'm standing on the street
locking
corner,
the doors and shit.
they lock the door and shit. When I was in Germany, I didn't get none of that. It was the first time in my adult life that I never felt like my skin color was an issue. Nobody looked at me. Nobody crossed the street. The only thing I ever felt like was a problem is I'm a fat motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And people were looking at me because of my fucking weight. You know what I'm saying? But me as a Black man, that wasn't a problem. I got called the N-word by a 16-year-old that didn't even say it right. He like, you know what I'm saying? He thought he was tough. You know, I saw skinheads over there that would look the other way, as I was not trying to look at me a 𝙎𝖪𝙗𝙧𝙞𝙗𝙧. I'm a big dude. You know what I'm saying? But look at the ground or look at the feet as they pass me. There's a town on 45 minutes in Eastern Germany. The town I was in was called 𝙬𝙚. I forgot the other town. It's like Gulick or some shit like that. But it's like 5 minutes. You can see the Czech Republic, like the border, right?
Yeah.
This is a known neo-Nazi town, right? I'm there drunk from my wife's sister's 40th birthday. Known to be a neo-Nazi town. Nobody pulled up with pitchforks. Nobody pulled up with a cross on there. They had the greatest opportunity, an American Black man in their fucking town. They
don't even do that in America, bro. They don't even do that in America.
No smoke.
Okay.
Okay.
$10. Let me make my money. $10 from PDX Club. Wick, please ask the panel if the George Floyd Act is colorblind or woke. Most conservative organizations have opposed this bill due to racial profiling or qualified immunity. What do we think?
Qualified immunity? I mean, maybe one of you guys can speak on that. I'm not qualified to speak on that. I'm not really into law as much as some of you guys may be. But after that, I did have something that I wanted to say.
Okay, fair enough. I just needed to read it out. You guys don't have to actually answer the question. I'm curious because Joe Lewis is on here, and I want to give him some space. He's kind of the new guy here. What do you think of the conversation so far? Where have we gone wrong? What have we done right? What are your thoughts here?
No, I think it's important for people to have these conversations. I think that's always an important thing. Yeah, that's where I'm at on it. I don't think there's like a correct narrative or correct idea from individuals or folks. It's just that everybody's coming from different ways. I'm not too sure about the George Floyd Act question. It sounds like
I'm reading into it right now.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just some people who don't really understand the difference between race-specific and race-neutral policy. And you can have something that is race-neutral while also putting race into account. A good example of this could be the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau, for those of you who don't know, this is more to Wick's chat than people on the panel. It was a branch of government that was introduced to provide assistance to impoverished white people, newly freed Black people, etc. But that was a race-neutral policy, where in theory, if you were somebody who was formerly enslaved, you could have benefited from the Freedmen's Bureau. But the Freedmen's Bureau was explicitly designed for newly franchised free people, which was disproportionately Black people. And with the George Floyd Act, the idea of it being woke, or what was it, colorblind?
Is colorblind or woke was the
it's probably something closer to being colorblind, where if you're going to have policy that readjusts policing, those who are going to feel the biggest adjustment are those who are going to be interfacing with the police more often. And that tends to be disproportionately people in cities, and people in cities disproportionately tend to be non-white. So, like,
as I read this, it sounds like a colorblind piece of legislation that is actually like this is actually probably like something to the colorblind folks' point, because it's basically saying that it's 3 bullet points from Congress.gov. It lowers criminal intent standards from willful to knowing or reckless. It limits qualified immunity as a defense liability in a private civil action, and it grants administration of subpoena power to Department of Justice in a pattern or practice of investigations. That sounds just like good for everybody. I think what incited it obviously was the George Floyd situation, but this sounds like colorblind shit gone right, if anything, because this sounds like something that everyone that's been on the fuck end of the police could use.
Well, yeah, it's on its face a universal program. And the universal program came about from racialized means. So
so here's the thing. I don't think that colorblind policies are necessarily wrong, and that's why it always gets you. It's like that. It's like the all lives matter thing, is where you would never say out of your mouth that I don't want to help everybody that knows what this particularly feels like. I think the reason that there's a lot of tension in the conversation is usually because if Black folks were targeted specifically and fucked with specifically to then combat them and say to Black people, well, when we help you though, right? Negatively, it was just you. But when we help you, it has to help everybody. We can't just help you. That's where there's always tends to be like a friction and a frustration.
Well, ideally, we get to the point where it just doesn't hurt us either, though.
Well, something I take a big issue with is the person of colorification of policy, where if you're going to have something that explicitly targets Black people and your advocacy about the policy is towards Black people, then don't bring a person of color in your argument. If something's about Black people,
I hate that phrase so much.
Yeah, if you want to be racially specific about Black people, why are you talking about persons of color? This is something that fizzled.
Yeah, there we go.
Somewhere.
See, I think this is something that most of us can agree on. That person of color shit is a bullshit phrase. It's very
I hate it. Yeah, it's pretty cringe.
Fizzling for me. I don't know if anybody else is catching that.
I always say it's like I always make a joke about how like Black people love remixes, and it's just a remix of Colored Person. It's just they just flip it.
It's just the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Before the color,
it
doesn't really change anything.
It is.
We're still all very poor. We're still all struggling in life. This didn't move us anywhere, society.
But that's the problem in it, because like I did not to like plug my shit, but I did a video about it that I'm dropping, I think like tonight or tomorrow, about just like how POC is just used as another way to appeal to like minority populism, where it's like, if you're not too sure if everybody's gonna be on board, if you say Black, then just say persons of color instead, because then that encapsulates everybody within this group. But then
I'm sorry. Can I say something just really quickly, Joe Lewis? I promise you I don't mean to keep cutting you off. Number one, I think all of the Black people here, we all agree the POC is a bullshit term. But and we know why it's a bullshit term.
Well, does anyone like it here? Does anyone like the POC term here? Anyone?
I think it's a coward way of saying what you stand on.
But I just want to say this really quickly though, Wick. We know Black people have know that look again. They want to include Asian and Hispanic and POC, but we know that our communities have had racial tensions with Hispanic and Asian peoples, and these communities have treated black people here in America far worse than white people have, even though they do not have a disproportionate amount of political power. If they did, if they had that
my
kind
man's
of power,
playing his hand a little too hard, but
what? No, because it's like because he had me up until worse. Worse is crazy. I don't know.
You had a good hand. You had a good hand.
Relative to power. Relative to political power. Hold on. Relative to political power. Again, if you want to put all these people under one umbrella, we know it's a bullshit term because we know that these communities do not like each other.
Well, I'll try to like extend this olive branch in the phrase because before I shit on something, I try to understand it. If you say minority, right, but you want to affect people who are particularly affected by racial issues, it makes sense that you want to get away from the term minority because poor people are a minority, right? And that kind of goes to what we were saying earlier. But beyond that, it's just a remixed version of colored person. That's what it feels like to me.
This is also why
I've never really liked it either. I would say this though, I haven't read very much in the legislation. If I saw something that had people of color POC, and it was something that I felt very like it covered a wide margin of people. It covered like the entire issue by using the phrase, then I would be okay with it. Other than that, I'm 100% down with everybody else. It's just a distraction. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it's a distraction.
And we use it. I'm sorry, Jalous. This is my last thing I'm going to say. I'm going to shut up and let you go. It's used as a political ploy. Let's stop pretending like they're not using this as a political ploy to unify people under one political identity. Let's just stop.
Why is that a bad thing? I'm going to play devil's advocate as a white man on the panel, okay, as my representative of my people. Why is it a bad thing to try to unify others, though?
Because we've never addressed the problems we've had with each other. We've never sat and talked about how Asians and blacks and Hispanics don't get along. That has never been a thing that's been like at the political forefront of conversation. So they're just
it has on Fox News. It has on, you say that, but it has on Fox News. They talk about it all the time. You say, all the black people that hate the Asians, right? That's all you hear. So to act as if we don't talk about it, I don't know, man.
I think people don't understand the issues that happen with inside of communities. Like there was a situation, I think, in California with those Latino representatives and just basically just saying anti-black things about a person, their adopted child, where like there are certain tensions within communities, but that's not necessarily because those communities hate each other. It's just politics. And with them politics,
let me respond real quick. No, please let me respond to what you said.
Okay.
I disagree with that. I don't believe that just, hey, you see how black people hate Asians is talking about it. To really talk about it would be to go into the history and have an understanding of why these problems exist, right?
Joe. Is it true that most people don't know?
Just go to Prime.
I mean, I'm gonna be real with y'all.
This idea, this idea that what happened with the LA council members, like, is not necessarily race; it's just politics. I mean, like, I don't know how you can divorce those two. And I don't think you, and I know you usually don't. So I just assume it's a turn of phrase.
Yeah, the thing that I was trying to say is that, like, to
it's
clarify,
definitely about race, though.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
so yeah, it's even within the Latin ethnicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those were like European Latin individuals, and they hate the darker skinned ones, right?
I've talked specifically to council members that they've said straight up that if they had the choice, they would make sure that black people were never able to vote again in the face of political losses. Like, that's what council members have just said outright.
I got a long joke.
And like I was saying previously, that to Solus, was it? Yeah, I was saying to Solus, is that I think racism ends up being a stand-in for
other things,
the fight over resources, right? Like, so I understand
about politics, where it's like,
so
like,
I hear you
fighting for
Joe.
Resources. If you see like for instance in the gerrymander,
there's
case
the political power. No, I got you.
Yeah,
so there's like the political power struggle in LA, right, with the Latin community increasing, and then like the deciding like who gets chairs on the city council, and there was a lot of tension based on that, like who gets voting power, and black people feel like they're being displaced. You know, I hear you, right? But like they pointed it's not like they pointed to a zip code, right? They pointed to black people, right? And they said like awful things about people being black, right? Like that kid,
they play with the whole
they were the whole 9 yards. So like I just like don't want to separate those two.
Thank you for the raid, Kilo the Giant. Thank you for the raid. Appreciate it. Okay, carry on. Sorry.
I think that's what a colorblind perspective does, is that like it ends up separate. And I know you have a very nuanced look at this, Joe, so I'm not like attacking you. But a colorblind perspective would say that it's just politics. I guess that's why they did it, right? And nothing else.
Well, I just absolutely love how through all the cursing out and all the yelling and shit, we all have gotten to a point after the POC shit, so we're all unified and we get along now. Because I think we all universally hate that person of color bullshit.
Well, I think I think again, like the problem is just like the crushing. This is why I have a really deep issue now when we talk about reparations for black people. It's not reparations for black people. It's reparations for American descendants of slaves. If you want to talk about reparations for other groups that exist within the ethnicity of black people in the United States, that's fine, and we ought to do that. Like the relationship that black immigrants have in the United States is going to be different than American descendants of slaves. But the problem is if you group all of the different ethnicities that exist within black people in the United States as a matter of policy, it's just going to confuse people, and those differences are going to be used against each other in political aspects.
So this isn't the topic, but I am curious. Is there anyone here who does not support reparations for descendants?
So I support them in a different way. I support the reparations in
but I'm asking, is there anyone who just flat out says reparations is a bad idea? No? Okay, we're all on board for reparations. Like,
I don't know. I'm iffy about it.
I support them in a way that like we help poor people. We help all poor people in America. We strengthen the quality of our social safety nets. We invest in our schools, make college more affordable, things like that.
I'm totally for the whole. I'm totally for like maybe like the. I think Solus is on the same thing with this too. We talk about this in DGG. One of our boy 𝙍𝖏𝙗.
Damn, you said
reservation.
DGG.
Yeah, I know.
The fact that you claim that in public is insane, dog.
Hey, let me live. Let me live.
The fact you claim that in public as well.
But hold on, let me finish. Anyways, the reservation.
Hold on, real quick. So is it
no, just somebody agreed. No.
Is that what you're saying right now?
Don't do it.
No, very few.
We have stories about. That's another story for another.
Yeah. Destiny's Discord is racist as shit. Anyways, I'll stand on that.
What's going on here?
Anyways, no. Reservations. I think that's the way we should look towards reparations. Towards reservations.
We should definitely just take it as reservation for black folks.
I want Oregon and Washington.
But
that's what I want.
Okay, Proof, you just said that like you support reparations, but like for poor people. But like that's not reparations. Then that means you don't support reparations, right? Like you support monetary redistribution, which is great, which can be a good thing. And I'm in general in favor of those policies. But like you're not talking about reparations. That's a different thing.
Okay, so again, this is why I still call it reparations, right? Because a disproportionate amount of black people here in America are poor. If we have a package, right, that disproportionately helps out poor people, we would still be disproportionately helping black people.
Yeah,
rectify.
We get that.
I mean,
we understand that, but that's not reparations.
There are 3,810 communities here in America that have water supplies just as bad or worse than Flint, Michigan. Right? Okay. Why is nobody talking about this? Right? So these communities
that has nothing to do with the question, though. I get it.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. These communities are going to be in poor areas, and these poor areas are going to be disproportionately going to be black areas, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's not all black areas. And you leave black people behind.
Have you seen the map? Have you seen the fucking map?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't get your like racist view that all black people are poor, right? It'll be disproportionate to black people. I guess that's good enough. No, that's literally the whole point. The whole point of your argument is that like from a class blind view, or sorry, a race blind view, that we could just give it to poor people, and then that helps black people. So that's why I'm trying to like tease out of you. Yes, I get that. Holy crap! You keep saying that as if that solves it. It literally doesn't. So what I'm asking you, what I'm trying to get to, is that like That is not reparations.
Okay,
reparations,
before we go too far, I'm gonna make some more money. $5 from Ice Beans. And we can get to these after the back and forth, but I just want to get them out. Sure. $5 from Ice Beans. Do we actually think black people would actually forget about their history if race became less of a priority when judging a person? I feel like we'd always have people around to keep the cultural significance alive, but maybe that's naive of me. And then $5 from Trib1.
Okay.
What term should be used instead when addressing non-whites, other than POC, basically? Non-specific and all-encompassing. What is better? What is a better term than POC?
That's the dumbest shit that I've ever heard in my entire life. Just say non-whites.
Yeah, but that's literally running into the same problem, which is why
just be direct.
That's true. This is true. This is true.
You just be direct in your identification.
It's also less descriptive. Non-whites is like less descriptive. You have to have some finer description.
Like,
why is non-whites not? Wait, that seems pretty kosher to me. I don't.
Wait, before y'all get
okay, hold on. Wait. Before you. Yeah, no. We're gonna get into it. Even before you say that, we're gonna get into it.
I just wanted to say I got a bounce.
Izzy, where can people find you? Let's give space to Izzy. Where can people find you?
I just wanted to bounce. Okay, sorry. It's been good talking to you guys. You can find me Ozymandias on Twitter @Mundialism. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys.
Hey,
hopefully,
Izzy, nice meeting you, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Request.
All right, absolutely. Thank you so much, dude. Yeah, for sure. You'll get it back.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy, guys.
Get the fuck out of here.
Oh, watch your mouth, dog. You ain't gonna fuck with my new homie like that, dog.
There's always one no cam guy. There's always one.
Okay, see you later, buddy.
Bye.
Take it easy, guys.
Bro.
He said, "What a nice young man."
I'll put you in your place, Adaris. All right.
That's a nice guy.
But anyway, like, yeah, what is like? I think you're trying to say that these redistributive policies are like a rose by another name. I'm saying you're talking about a daffodil, right? Like redistributive policy, like is great and it's useful, but that's not reparations. That's not giving a restorative solution to systemic racism or to like the crime of slavery. It's like not doing that. Sure, that's going to help a disproportionate amount of black people. You don't have to say that again. I get it. But a disproportionate amount of black people, but that's not actually addressing that issue.
If I was like if you would wait, do you believe like that? Did you believe a black person that is a descendant of slaves but is like middle class and doing pretty well for themselves does not deserve reparations as much as every other black person?
I mean, look, to me, this seems to be the most pragmatic solution, right? Because again, we're 14% of the country, and I don't think we have more than 50% of popular opinion as far as reparations go. So one way that we rectify this, right, is if we have a health.
Sorry.
One way that we rectify this is if we have more public support for these policies, right? So if we help poor people, we would disproportionately be helping poorer black people, right? So again, whether or not I think middle class black people deserve reparations for being the descendants of slaves is neither here nor there to me. I'm saying that this is the path with the least amount of bloodshed.
I can't help but feel like if you support colorism, you probably shouldn't be supporting reparations as well.
I don't think he does support reparations. I agree with Prime. I don't think that's reparations. I think that's just wealth distribution.
If from an efficacy standpoint,
wealth
sure. Like
redistribution.
if you want to have a legislation and your argument is for like this will help everybody, we're not just trying to help black people. I'm sure that'll go over well. But like they said, it's not reparations for black folks. Because again, I'm not gonna hold you. If I was a middle class black person, descendant of a slave, right? The history was there. And just because I was one of the few that overcame all the bullshit, I don't get to be a part of the reparations of the shit that I overcame. I don't think that that's fair or right. Like, that's fucked up.
But then let me ask you, Solus. So if I am a struggling white man who, again, despite all the privileges that society may have offered me, I'm still like living paycheck to paycheck. How is it fair that just because someone else's ancestors had to go through all sorts of shit, they're getting a check and I'm getting fuck all, right? Like, how's that?
Okay, wait.
Yeah, let him I asked Solus. I'm curious, Solus. Because your argument you just made is just in reverse, right?
No, but if any time in history the United States government did something fucked up to white folks, whatever group of people you feel like you belong to, like you're a poor white, whatever that, right? If that happened to you, you deserve reparations for it. But what I don't think is fair is to be like, yo, black people got fucked over specifically because they were black. They were specifically targeted, and now we're specifically targeting them to make amends for that. And to feel that you deserve, it's not your problem. It's not your, you have nothing to do with that. I don't understand why that. If they said tomorrow, all descendants of, like, I don't know, pick any group of white folks in America that got fucked over, right? If they said all descendants of these people are going to get help, I would not, as a black person, be like, well, what the fuck, man? I'm poor too. Like, that's
maybe you wouldn't, but there would absolutely. So if tomorrow we had legislation that the descendants of Irish immigrants,
but wait, the bigger problem with this logic is to say that because one group went through something, and you're gonna benefit, you're gonna make amends for what that one group went through without providing benefit to every other group. That would stop you from being able to make amends with targeted amends. Like, if black people went through slavery and it produces these perturbations that reverberate for several centuries, and we want to make a targeted effort to try to revert those problems that resulted from that event, regardless of what's happening with white people or how white people have evolved over time or anything like that, if you're going to make targeted amends, it's going to be targeted to this group. If there are other grievances that the group has gone through, I mean, that's a separate issue. Then we would have to also make amends for those things. But those are two separate things.
Yeah, and I think
you can't have them overlap. It creates a stasis.
Go ahead,
Joe. Honestly, it just makes the argument for direct redress stronger as other groups get redressed, because not for nothing, like, we're paying for the redress for 9/11 victims and their survivors and their descendants. Like, that's something we're doing until the 2090s. And you're not going to have people, like, if you came out tomorrow and started outcrying, that's not fair, I shouldn't be paying for those 9/11 victims, you're going to look like an idiot and probably get trashed online and probably lose your political career if you're high enough. Where, like, we don't make these things for certain groups of people, and we shouldn't. We look at the redress, we look at the harm, and go, hey, yes, this is something that we ought to do.
But should we not take that, how these individuals are doing, into any account? So if you have a victim of 9/11, right, who, let's say it's 2050, okay, so this happened 50 years ago. Give me a second, let me finish.
Let him cook.
Yeah, 50 years ago, okay. Horrible tragedy in the family, loss of life, devastating. But you've overcome that. Now you're making six figures. Now, or whatever the equivalent is at the time. Now you're doing well. Would it be out of pocket for someone to suggest, maybe we fixed the problem solved for this individual, maybe they shouldn't be getting redress for that because we've actually solved the problem?
The only reason why you'd be coming out for a redress claim is because you have harm that's connected to that lineage of being a 9/11 survivor.
But at a certain point, the harm is fixed, is it not?
But if you agree, it's like, if someone does something wrong to you, just because you overcome it does not mean that you're not entitled to an apology. Like,
but once the apology is given, so if I do something to you, if I punch you in the face,
we already do something like this. Like, there's already analogies. There's, like, for instance, my grandma, she used to work at Area 51. And because of what they were doing there, she got exposed to, I forgot what chemical, I think maybe asbestos or something. So, like, 30 years later, she got a settlement. She received a settlement from the government. She doesn't need it. She's doing totally fine. And my grandma is very well off. She doesn't need money at all. But it's just the fact that she was put in a hazardous environment, she still deserves that settlement, regardless of how much time
she's gotten it. This is my point. She's gotten it. Once she's got it, the debt is clean. The slate is clean, right? And that's my whole point.
What's the difference between that and slavery, though?
Okay, so once you get reparations, are we done?
No, because you have.
This is a problem here. Like, once we give you reparations,
it actually isn't a problem. It's a very easy argument to connect. It's a very easy argument to connect. A reparations and the redress that exists with reparations is an agreement on both parties. The first party, in this case, American descendants of slaves, is saying that we're going to make sure that the American government is accountable for their actions moving forward, so we never have to do this again. And it's the United States government saying, we redress to this, we recognize the harm existed, where it existed, how and why, and we will never do this again to you. And both groups are on account here. Because the minute that the American government goes the wrong way again and starts doing some nonsense, like to tie in, 𝙎𝙬, your name is characters, I'm so sorry.
That's Tubi. That's
Tubi. Like, to Tubi's point, like, if the United States government goes around and starts doing some fuck shit in Area 51 all over again, then it's the same cycle again, where it's like, it's an agreement to both parties that we're going to hold each other accountable to make sure we never have to do this again.
I understand that portion of it. I just don't understand, and again, this might be just ignorance, is again, I think that once redress is made, it's made, it's done. Well, like, for example, if I punch you in the face and I apologize to you, you accept the apology, it would be weird if 10 years later you kept bringing it up. Like, then we never solved the problem,
again?
right?
It would be weird 10 years later if you punch me in the face.
Punch me in the face again. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, you know.
Also, I think it's more complicated than just punching someone in the face, right?
Analogies, right?
There's 3 parts of it to me. That's why I brought this up. There's and again, like, other people have said this too. There's the apology, there's a redress, and closure. And all 3 of these things have to happen in a plan for reparations. You can't have reparations with just an apology. You can't have reparations with just an apology and redress. You need all 3 of these things. And unfortunately, for a lot of folks, they think, like, and it's no fault of their own, in my opinion, they just think that, like, oh, like, once we get to the redress, and that's it. Like, you can just shut up about it. And it's like, no, we still hold each other accountable for our actions. Like, and then it's like, oh, if we just apologize, it's over. It's like, no, we have to recognize that the person who did harm understands what the harm was, why it was harmful, and then the steps to make sure that they're never going to do it again and to redress the harm. Because sometimes it's just like an apology. It's like, sorry, and I'll never do it again. And it's like, okay, and then that's it. But there's still closure there at all times. Because if something happens down the line, then we're going to be back in the same position.
I understand. I just, again, it feels weird to me. It feels wrong to me. And I'll just be clear. I'll be honest with you. It feels wrong to me that someone who is making 6 figures, who happens to be an African descendant of American descendant of slaves, would get a check when someone else who wasn't, but is struggling, gets nothing. It feels wrong. Does that make sense?
Again, we gotta look at the least amount of bloodshed. Ideally, this will be a reparations package, right? This is why I say down payment too. But this is why I say that we should help. We would have an easier time engaging in enacting redistributive legislative policies over something like, just giving reparations back to the African descendants of slaves, because again, it's not going to sit right with the majority of the country when 70% of the country is living paycheck to paycheck, and somebody else receives compensation because of their ancestral background and the negative connotations that came with being a slave, right? But that's just my opinion. I feel like
here's a simple like part of the reparations policy. One thing that Sandy 𝙬𝙤 brought up in one of his books was the idea of baby bonds. And the way that works is that if you are below the poverty line, you get a baby bond that's commensurate of your income, and no matter what, at the end of it, you're going to be anywhere from, I think it's like $50,000 to $60,000. And once you turn 18, that's available to you outright. Now, if we look at the wealth gap that exists between Black and white families, it's very clear that the people who are going to feel this the most and to be the most impacted are going to be Black families. And then the question is, well, what happens to Obama's kids? Because, I mean, Barack isn't a descendant of slaves, but Michelle is. Well, are they in a position where they are below a particular wealth gap? In this case, below the poverty, we'll say like the poverty line for this hypothetical? No. So while they are an American descendants of slaves and part of the reparations package, this part of the package does not include them, but they might be included in other areas.
Wick, I just don't understand why you're so against it. Just because there's people.
I'm not necessarily against it,
because
right?
he's a fucking centrist.
But I'm not necessarily against it.
Just to be more clear,
I'm just asking.
Are you against every redress that America has ever made, or any redress that Germany?
But I am against.
People? What is exceptional about those redress where you're not outraged about those, but then reparations, you're just having this really difficult time accepting
because of the time difference. There's a lot of they were for example, we gave reparations to the Japanese, the families of the Japanese who were interned in camp. It happened
about Native
to them.
Americans. I mean, a lot of time passed before we gave any kind of redress to Native Americans.
Certainly. And look
the Native Americans who were going into Spanish missionaries and being converted. Those were not the Native Americans that received redress. They're dead.
Yeah.
That was like a long time ago.
Yeah. And that's, again, if my problem isn't with reparations, it's reparations to people who don't need it. And let me give you an example, right? Again, if someone, like, to use a very hyperbolic example, if someone who is Oprah wealthy, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars, it feels off when we are giving them stuff, but not giving it's the juxtaposition of someone who is very poor, but they did not go through the historical issues. Their family didn't go through the historical issues that the extremely rich person does. And so we fix the past at the expense of the present. That's how it feels, right?
Well, I would say a more accurate depiction is before this person above me goes. I would say once slavery happened, all black people in America, whether now contemporaneously they make six figures or they're middle class or they're poor, everyone had to start from that point. So the redress is because at some point that was initiated. Regardless of where you are now, you're redressing what the inception.
I understand. That's what you're addressing. I understand the kind of justice argument. I get it from a justice
but you're saying like,
but my argument is
they make six figures now, and
the harm is not there at the same level, right? They have overcome it.
The harm was there at some point, just because, like the person above me, just because they overcame it, doesn't mean that the harm was never there. The family overcame the harm at some point, but you still have to make amends for that.
Yeah,
because at some point, the whole reason the family had to overcome the harm is because the harm took place. You don't get excused from that just because they found a way to overcome that.
But that's the thing. They fixed it. And sure, it wasn't fair that they didn't get, that the party that harmed them didn't fix it themselves. Sure, it wasn't fair. But the fact remains, fixed it was, right? It was, the problem was solved. The problem does not exist anymore.
I break the roof on your house. You fix it. You want to sue me for the damages, for the cost of fixing
your it. Your great-great-grandfather broke the roof on my great-great-grandfather's house, and now I am coming to you, asking you to fix my house.
Before you say anything else, Wick, do you really think this is analogous?
So our great-great-grandfather got in a tiff and they broke your house. Okay, or they broke the roof on your house. Okay. And then you got it fixed. And let's say even after you got it fixed, then my kids came and broke your house. And then you got it fixed again. And then after that, my kids' kids came and broke your house, the roof on your house again. And now, one generation or two generations separate from that, you fixed the house. So you're saying I get to, for 3 generations, break your roof, and just because you fixed it, you're owed no redress.
You didn't break it, though. Right? That's the thing. You didn't break it. Go ahead, Solus.
Real quick. My point is, the reason that I'm with bro, that's not analogous because no one is. I'm not pulling white people off the street and be like, you owe me. It's addressed to the American government. I mean, sure, it's going to come out of the taxpayers' monies, but that's going to happen every time anything happens.
A lot of things do.
Like I don't know, like if that's the issue, that just is what it is. It's addressed to the American government. The American government did it, and the American government is not a grandfather. It hasn't changed. It's the same one. You know what I mean? Like that's why I say that's not analogous. And the point being is like you could like remove this example if you need. If I do, it's as simple as if I do something wrong to you, and I say I am going to make amends for the wrong thing I did for you. It is not fair for me then to be like, well, you don't need it. You're okay now. An apology is an apology. Paying for a wrong is paying for a wrong. If anything, if you're genuine about it, you should really feel like that person deserves whatever they overcame for your wrong and whatever you're going to give them on top of that. It's not your job to start like pocket watching and being like, well, you got it, so you don't need it. No, wrong is wrong, bro.
$5 from 𝙎𝙪𝙗 to say, let's be honest, the problem with the reparations to 𝙎𝙪 is mainly the time and the amount. Time is less of an issue. Money is a big issue. And then $5 from Firechild to say reparations are just repayment for stolen labor value. Poor white people don't deserve any. It belongs to the families of those who were stolen from.
It's not even. It doesn't have to be.
I don't know, dude. This shit sounds crazy to me because you're making it sound like like
Majin,
slavery was so
static.
Oh, my bad.
Is when you beat Huffin, man. Huffin that medicine.
I don't know,
right?
Wick. I don't like this argument because it just makes it seem like if enough time evolves, every like atrocity is okay. There's no
but that's
need
just
to
that's
make
just
amends
how it
for
is.
because every
Wait. Do you know that joke that's like every 10 years, white people add another 100 years to how long slavery was ago? Do you know that joke?
yeah, like Wick. What I also disagree with you. I also think I'm sorry.
But
Like,
if time isn't do you think that time isn't a factor?
Wait. No. I just think you have like. This is not to like be offensive or whatever, but like I just think you have like a white person's interpretation of how long like slavery was. Like my great grandma grew up on a plantation, bro. Like she it's not that long ago. Yeah. What are you talking about?
Well, so again, but no, stop. I want to address this. Prime, give your outro, but then I want to address this. Prime,
no problem. So I'm gonna head out because I've already had this conversation with Wick many times. I know exactly where it's going to go, right? And it's not because he's white; it's because he's a centrist. I actually do mean that. That's his political center, and that'll lead him to these outcomes, right? So I know where this game goes. But this has been a lot of fun. Yeah, and I love you too. And I also want to say that like I think Wick is a fantastic individual. I appreciate him for inviting me on. This is a lot of fun to do. And I hope to talk to many of you guys in the future, especially you, Solus. I think you're super interesting. But thank you all. Find me at twitch.tv and youtube.com/PrimeCayes, PrimeCayes. That's where you'll find me. I do panels like this. I'm back. We're going to have a black panel tomorrow. It'll be better than his black panel. We'll have black Jack.
I might show up.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'll see you in the future. Bye.
See you later.